Meeting to order now. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Jean Goss,
Here.
Mayor Pro Temp Rochelle Arizmendi. Present. Councilmember John Capoccia.
I'm here.
Councilmember Denise Delmar.
Here.
And Councilmember John Harabedian.
Here.
Thank you. Looks like it's my turn to lead the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. Please place your hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In keeping with the spirit of Memorial Day coming up this weekend, we have so many things coming up this weekend, but obviously that's the most grave and important. I went searching and I found a poem that I thought would be appropriate. Apparently this is something, it's called Freedom is Not Free. It's written by Kelly Strong. Apparently this is something that's pretty well known by military people and particularly the Marines. And then after I finish, I'd like us to have a moment of silence, so I'll lead that in a minute. I watched the flag pass by one day. It fluttered in the breeze. A young Marine saluted it, and then he stood at ease. I looked at him in uniform, so young, so tall, so proud. He stand out in any crowd. I thought how many men like him had fallen through the years, how many died on foreign soil, how many mothers' tears, how many pilots' planes shot down, how many died at sea, how many foxholes were soldiers' graves. No, freedom isn't free. I heard the sound of taps one night when everything was still. I listened to the bugler play and felt a sudden chill. I wondered just how many times the taps had meant amen when a flag had draped a coffin of a brother or a friend. I thought of all the children, of the mothers and the wives, of fathers, sons, and husbands with interrupted lives. I thought about a graveyard at the bottom of the sea, of unmarked graves in Arlington. No, freedom isn't free. Can we all have a moment of silence for all those who have died on behalf of our country? Thank you. Madam City Attorney, would you care to report out from closed session?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The council met in closed session this evening to get a briefing regarding a matter of existing litigation, Hildreth versus City of Sierra Madre. No action was taken. The council also met in closed session to receive a briefing on the status of negotiations with the police association. Direction was provided to the labor negotiator. And finally, the council received a briefing regarding a matter of, and this is procedural only, the process for an appeal of an employee discipline. And the direction was provided to appoint a hearing officer to preside over that appeal. And that is the end of my report, Mayor.
Thank you. And now we go to approval of the agenda. Is there any motion for approval?
I'd like to remove the one item on the consent calendar regarding the purchase of the vehicles for discussion.
What item is that?
You have it
That
in front
is-
of you?
It's item E.
E?
1E. E like elephant. Okay.
Any other changes?
I'll move for approval with that change.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mayor and City Council reports. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I attended my first community services meeting, which was also the joint meeting with the Library Board of Trustees and the Senior Commission, and I'm looking forward to serving with the Community Services, and I think we have some discussion about what that meeting was later on tonight.
I have nothing to report.
It's going to take me a minute.
Sure. I also attended the joint commission meeting, and we'll be reporting on that a little bit later. I also wanted to make an announcement in case everyone have not received this. Tomorrow, May 25, we'll have the ribbon cutting and gym dedication for Sierra Madre Middle School, and that will take place at 5:30, unless you want your In-N-Out double animal style. That's at 5 o'clock. And I also wanted to report out on Sierra Madre Elementary School. Sierra Madre Elementary School just today received a California Gold Ribbon Award, and our superintendent for the state of California, Tom Torlakson, was there to offer the award and award it to our local school. And just a quick summary on what that means. It's that we're recognized for parent and community engagement. We also received an award for exemplary arts education. And it really is an honor for Sierra Madre community as to how our community services really come together with partnering organizations like the Rotary, the Civic Club, Women's Club, the Kiwanis, and the library. So thank you to all of those partners in the community that made that happen. And if you're ever by the elementary school, I'm sure they'll have that beautiful banner hanging, and you can congratulate them.
I think Councilmember Capocia is still composing it. I'll just jump in
Okay.
real quick. I did have the singular pleasure of emceeing the celebration for outgoing City Clerk Nancy Schellenberger, and it was just a lot of fun. And she, of course, had a whole room full of people there supporting her, and it was just a very happy occasion. Also, I got to speak at the Older American of the Year Award for Ann Tyler. I don't know if Ann will be here tonight, but we will read that proclamation again here tonight in our meeting. And that's my report.
Okay, I attended a meeting on May 17th with several elected officials from various cities, and also a couple of attorneys, John Harris and Richard Montevideo, and also our city attorney attended as well, and Assistant City Manager Cox attended. And this was regards to the MS4 permit. And these two attorneys started with some background of what this is about. And I'm glad we have such a big audience in the crowd. And I'd ask you to listen to what I'm going to say right now, because this really affects every one of you folks eventually. Basically, we have a stormwater permit that is imposed by the State Water Board that has the potential to cost many millions of dollars. In the case of Sierra Madre, our liability could be up to $25 million with the enhanced watershed management plan that we have submitted and has been approved by the State Water Board. But John Harris is representing City of Gardena, and Richard Montevideo is representing the City of Duarte, who have filed lawsuits to protest this permit that has been imposed on us. And John Harris started out saying, you know, I've been working on stormwater, these permits, for 20 years, and he says, why has it gone so wrong? So basically, this started with the Cuyahoga River, where some of you may not be old enough to remember the Cuyahoga River catching on fire. And that was because outfalls from all the industries along the river were dumping all kinds of toxic stew, and the river just literally caught on fire, was burning for many miles. So with that came the Clean Water Act, which I think all of us support. It's a really good thing that we have the Clean Water Act, because our rivers and waterways are much, much cleaner now than they were then. But this started off where the permits for discharges into these rivers were really started with industries. Then little by little, municipalities became, because of lawsuits, became part of this, and municipalities are not allowed to have stormwater, which is a conveyance in our streets, enter into waters of the United States. Now, I've got about 6 pages of notes from this meeting because it was so damn interesting and informative, but I'm not going to go through all that. But the bottom line is that the Clean Water Act really is asking us to enforce what is called the maximum extent practicable to keep pollutants out of the waterways, but because of lawsuits from environmental interests, we are now required to comply with hard numbers about which pollutants are entering the waterways. And the State Water Board gave us this opportunity to become part of these enhanced watershed management plans as a so-called safe harbor so that we aren't going to get sued, but the environmentalists aren't happy with that, and they are suing to enforce strict numeric limits, which is not required by the Clean Water Act. So because of all this, and because the state allows the regional water boards the discretion to go beyond the requirements of the Clean Water Act, we now have this onerous permit in front of us that we have to comply with that, again, has the potential to cost Sierra Madre residents $25 million over 20 years. So how we're going to get that money is another story for another day. But I just want to say this because I believe, in my mind, this is one of the biggest threats that local governments have in front of them in the Los Angeles County area, and this is about to spread to Ventura and Orange County as well, and we need a legislative fix to do this. So now I'll fast forward to our COG meeting that I attended the other day. And the COG has directed, or the members of the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments have directed the executive director to have the Water Technical Action Committee working with the city manager's action committee to come up with a recommendation of how we're going to approach this problem, and looking for a legislative fix in California to help us with this. So I'm hoping we can get that in time before we have to spend too much money. But Madam City Manager, I'd like to ask you though, is now that these MS4, these watershed EWIMPs have been approved, and now we're on a schedule for compliance, can we have our consultant for our EWIMP group come to our meeting and explain to us what all the compliance measures are that are in that permit?
We definitely can.
Yeah, because I read the transmittal from the State Water Board, and the language in that, to me, is very scary. It's like they mean business, and you shall take action and get busy with this. Mm-hmm. In other words, start spending money now, you know? Okay, so with that, I just want to comment also on a couple of other things from the COG meeting, is that there will be a park ballot measure that's coming up that you've probably all heard about, because Proposition P in 2014 failed. It only got 62% to replace the Prop A funding that expired in 2015, and the second Prop A funding that will expire in 2019. So far, polls are indicating that a very high percentage of individuals are in favor of this. So hopefully that's going to pass, and I just want to make everybody aware of that. Unfortunately, on the November ballot, there's going to be a lot of things asking you to pay for more money. So, you know, that's coming. There's also, they commented on a couple of bills that are in the Senate, that there's a trailer bill inside the budget bill, and I just heard this on the radio the other day, that is Governor Brown is pushing to streamlining affordable housing approval, and the League of California Cities is expected to draft a letter of opposition. So that might be something that'll come before us to sign in a resolution in opposition to that. So without going into details, but that's going to basically take a lot of your local control away over affordable housing. They'll have a CEQA exemption, and also by right, where the state is going to lay out the rules and your zoning codes don't even matter. They can just approve this thing. So it's pretty scary. Okay, thank you for listening. That's all I have.
Thank you for all the good
Councilmember.
news. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Bill Hopper.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so now we will open this up for public comment on non-agenda items. If it's not on the agenda, please feel free to come up and speak for three minutes.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Schilling, and I live at 633 West Alegria Avenue. I'm here tonight with my husband and one of our neighbors, Bruce Jones, to discuss our growing concern on our street that Sierra Madre is becoming a haven for offshore investors who are purchasing up real estate, leaving homes vacant, and changing the very things we most love about living in Sierra Madre. My husband and I moved here to Sierra Madre 10 years ago, and like most people, we love the traditions, the history, the surrounding beauty, but mostly we love the sense of neighborhood that we have here. For most of the 10 years, we have enjoyed the friendliness, diversity, and care of our surrounding neighbors. We have gotten to know our neighbors. We watch out for one another. We water each other's plants. We pick up each other's newspapers and mail when out of town. We drop off the occasional card or gift. We make homemade treats at the holidays. And in general, we've enjoyed learning about new people who live around us. Sierra Madre is unique in this way, and we are grateful to live here. But in the past year, our block has been changing. Houses are sold, but instead of moving vans arriving, new families moving in, or new paint going up on a house, the houses have remained vacant, untended, grass growing high, bushes unkempt, windows boarded up. In other cases, a series of renters arrive. They move in, they move out, and we aren't even sure who actually lives there. As an example, the house next door to us was sold last year after our elderly neighbor passed away. Her children, who we knew, sold the house, and since then we have counted no fewer than 6 tenants who have lived there, and perhaps more because we have tried and failed to discover who actually belongs and who doesn't. 2 weeks ago, there was a gas smell that another neighbor reported to us. We tried repeatedly to find out the tenants and notify them, could not, and so we reported it to the city, who did attend to it. On our block of 36 homes, there are currently 7 homes that are completely uninhabited, most in the past 2 years, and 2 that do have inhabitants, but the homes are not cared for and appear to have a series of single or group renters who come and go. In a quick check on Trulia, a common element is the houses are sold very quickly, usually for cash, and the selling price is often over the asking price, and the homes are listed under a corporation in some cases or a single name, but never the people who actually live in the house. Our street is not an aberration. As we walk our neighborhood, we are starting to see more homes being sold quickly and then just as quickly lying vacant. We embrace a diverse neighborhood, and I want to make it clear that our intent here tonight is not to stir the seeds of bigotry. My comments are not aimed at a specific group. Our concern is that our neighbors and our neighborhoods are being hollowed out by offshore buyers who are using our town to park their money with no intention of living here or participating in the town we love. And that is danger to all of our neighborhoods and should be a grave concern to our city leaders. This council has a fierce history of protecting our small town from overgrowth and commercial development, but while we're paying attention to developers, we are completely ignoring a larger threat, and that is that we become a haven for foreign investment and not a place that people want to live. I urge this council to agendize this issue and allow us to either share proof or research the realtors and investors looking only to use our town as a cash haven be put on notice that Sierra Madre is not the place that we will welcome this practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Schilling.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Jones, and I live at 662 West Alegria with my wife, Joy. We have been there for 37 years, and we've raised a family. Both of our sons are now grown and gone. And I'm coming before you as an example of a person who has been impacted by the issue that Joanna just brought up. And I'll start right away. On the 3rd of May, we came home to a very large tree branch from the neighbor's tree. Let me mention that the house I'm speaking about is next door to us on the west. It's 670 West Alegria. and it had fallen on our garage roof and torn up our new gutters that we had just had put in. And the damage was $750, and then I paid an additional $375 to have this elm tree cut back because it was imminently going to fall on either the house or one of our cars. And I could only cut back to the property line, and we've done the best we could, but there are still branches which originate with the tree that are in imminent danger of falling. And there has been no water on the property in at least 3 years. The meter is red tagged and there is no water service. There hasn't been any water on the property. It's very, very dry. And my main concern is that there's a large accumulation of dead tree branches, plants, other flammable materials, and 2 neglected palm trees with great big beards of palm fronds. And that poses to us, this is my main concern, a fire danger. It's just a tinderbox back there. And we are in a brush area. I think I checked with my insurance company and we are considered being in a brush area. And I'm wondering if that would warrant some attention to this property, because you might be able to impose brush clearance rules on that, if that's possible. But it is a terrible danger. It scares me to death. And I did contact the fire marshal quite a few months ago and was told that they could only act on violations that they saw from the street. And really, if you drive by the property, you can't see anything from the street. And I'm just wondering if there's something that could be done about that. Also, our personal view from our back deck is pretty ugly. We're looking at dead growth, we're looking at dead plants, bare dirt, a house which is in tear down condition, and it's really not fun to look at. We've had bugs, we've had mosquitoes, and it just has been quite unpleasant. And I just want to call this to your attention as one who's been directly impacted with this issue, because it is absentee ownership. We checked on that. And I'd also like to invite anyone on the council or staff to come by. I'll let you in our house at 662, and you can see from the deck, what we've been looking at and the fears that I have of fire. So you're all welcome to come by. And not to mention that there is a negative impact on our real estate value. If someone wants to buy our house, they're going to walk out on the deck and say, well, I don't want to look at that. So I invite anybody in city government to come by and see if they would like to look at what we've been looking at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We're getting some questions, and so we'll take all those questions when the public comment is over, see if we can address some of them.
I'm Steve Schilling. I'm the third member of this unholy triumvirate here. I live at 633 West Allegria. We've been there for 10 years with my wife, and I've been given a proxy to speak on behalf of 8 households on our street. These neighbors all attended a meeting that Joanna and I called with Councilwoman Rochelle Arizmendi on April 5th. Here we expressed our frustration over the issue which has been presented to you. She advised us that in order to have our grievances addressed, we should start here with public comments. Our primary purposes here are: 1, to describe the phenomenon of vacant houses taking place on Allegria Avenue, and 2, to have this issue agendized at a future council meeting. We feel that the city administration needs to step up here and be responsive to its constituents. This is not an issue that affects just West Allegria. This is something that could affect potentially all of Sierra Madre. We can predict that there will be a knee-jerk response here to say nothing can be done. The buyers are protected by anti-discrimination laws. I want you all to see the irony here, okay? Our own laws in this country are protecting buyers from another country and allowing them to flatten our neighborhoods. Generally, or certainly we have ideas, a vacancy tax, formulation of HOAs to restrict foreign ownership, renters taxes, increased property upkeep oversight. Okay. We need some creativity here from the council as well. We also need to see some courage. A pushback in Sierra Madre could be an example to other communities who are now beginning to experience this problem of offshore investing, and then the result is a vacant home. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling.
My name is Joy Painter. I live at 640 West Allegria, and these are my neighbors. And I'm very lucky. We love our street. And for those of you who can't imagine where we are on Allegria, we're not on the Halloween side. We're on the Michelinda side, so we only are a block long. I also just want to add one thing, and that is rats and mice, because that's how our house has been impacted, because the house that Bruce was talking about, I think of as the hoarder house on our street. And that's because that's who lived there before it sold. And mice and rats also live there in this nasty house. And even though it's vacant now, there still are vermin that are crawling around the street. And I've called the city a few times about that. And I think it's better now, but who knows when that'll pop up again. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Painter.
Good evening. My name is Larry Torres. I'm a member of the Pasadena School Board, and I recognize many of you here. And Rachel kind of stole my thunder, but we were going to, this is Gretchen.
I'm Gretchen Vance. You all know me. This is Sarah.
And we wanted to extend an invitation to come to our ribbon cutting ceremony and our gym dedication ceremony for Ty Gaffney, longtime principal at Sierra Madre Elementary School. As Rachel had mentioned, it's going to start at 5:30. It should be not too long, but we expect a large crowd, and I'm very excited because we feel like we have a jewel here. We have just one of the most wonderful schools in the district, right here in our own backyard. And wonderful things are happening in our schools. The gold medal ribbon that was given out today, but the Sierra Madre schools, I think, are treasures to our community, and it's a wonderful thing to be involved in. So anyway, just wanted to encourage you to come tomorrow at 5:30 and honor Ty Gaffney, and come explore our grounds if you haven't had a chance to go see it. It is breathtakingly beautiful. So thank you.
And I just want to add, of course, we have the In-N-Out truck coming at 5 o'clock, so come for a burger.
Oh yes, food.
And all the classrooms will be open. We'll have student docents there to give tours. We're very excited. We also talked the district into throwing in $600,000 to redo the backfield. Yes. So come and enjoy that. So we're very excited.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one other comment about the watershed issue. I would encourage you to look at partnering with the schools, because as part of the watershed project, I think it's something that the schools could play a partner in with the water districts and those sorts of things. So just a thought, but you know that's looming over all the cities. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torres.
I would just like to go on record tonight as personally congratulating Ann Tyler for being awarded Older American. We go back almost 40 years. I've actually been in Sierra Madre for 40 years, and it was on the fire department in the late 70s and early 80s, and I knew Ann and Jim, and when I was practicing dentistry, Ann was a patient, and she's a very, very good friend. And are you here, Ann?
No.
Bummer. But I just wanted to go on record and say she's just wonderful, and I heartily congratulate her from both Joy and me. That's it.
Thank you. Any more public comment on non-agenda items?
Oh, she didn't get his name.
It's Mr. Jones. Yeah.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and staff. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address everyone this evening. My name is Shannon King. I'm a member of the Library Board of Trustees, and just a quick update, I'd love to remind you, as well as everyone in the community, to please join us for our summer reading program. Our fantastic librarians, Megan Tosh and Christine Smart, have worked with our library director, Tony Buckner. They've put together a fabulous plan. There's some wonderful brochures at the library for summer reading for children, teens, adults. There's activities in June coming up that personally to me sound pretty fun. The Animal Magic Show, Animals Around the World, Robotics Workshop, Pastel Art Workshop, and it goes on and on. So there's activities for folks of all ages, and on the back page you'll find out more information on the One Book, One City program, which is very exciting. There's a movie coming up, a tour of Dodger Stadium, and more. So I have brochures for you this evening, and I encourage everyone to visit the library and participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee King. Any more comment on non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none. We have a presentation to do, and I hear that Madam City Manager, do we know if Ann Tyler is here or on her way? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to have the pleasure of doing this a second time, and this time in front of the camera so the whole city can see it. This is a copy of the certificate of proclamation we gave to Ann at her celebration a little over a week ago. And so I'll just read it. I think it's self-explanatory. Certificate of Recognition, City of Sierra Madre, Ann Tyler, 2016 Sierra Madre Older American of the Year. Whereas, since Ann Tyler moved to Sierra Madre over 70 years ago, she's been an inspiration in getting others to dedicate their time to our special foothill community. Born in Long Beach, California, Ann moved to Sierra Madre after the 1933 earthquake. In 1941, Ann married James Bryce Tyler and raised 6 children, never leaving Sierra Madre. And whereas Ann has energetically been involved in the activities of the Sierra Madre Volunteer Fire Department Association, when it was referred to as the Wives Club, as well as a founding member and former president of the Sierra Madre Civic Club and Women's Club, as well as being a member of the Priscillas, groups that have benefited us all. And whereas Ann's constant liveliness, like ziplining in Alaska at 90 years young, followed by her lifelong genuine commitment to her community, has been a motivating and vital force, inspiring us to volunteer our time for the benefit of our neighbors and to better appreciate those who selflessly spend their time helping distinguish Sierra Madre from other cities. And whereas Ann Tyler has been recognized for outstanding community service by the Sierra Madre Senior Community Commission and the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors for her outstanding service to the community of Sierra Madre, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of Sierra Madre does hereby commend Ann Tyler for her outstanding contributions to the community of Sierra Madre and her designation as Sierra Madre's 2016 Older American of the Year, presented this 13th day of May 2016, Sierra Madre City Council, Mayor Gene Goss, Mayor Pro Tem Michelle Arizmendi, Council members John Capocia, Denise Delmar, and John Harabedian. Shall we give her a hand, even though she knows? The ceremony the other day at Hart Park House was indeed very special. She's a very special lady. And I'm also going to get the opportunity to make a proclamation. Do I have to get to do this with someone to come up, or am I going to do this by myself? Or Jackie, you going to join me? Okay.
We also need to address the questions of public comment.
I'm sorry?
We need to address them.
Okay. So should I read this or should you read it? You can read it. Okay. I'm going to read it and you can read along. Okay. This is a certificate of recognition, City of Sierra Madre. This is our formal proclamation and recognition of Older Americans Month, May 2016. Whereas Sierra Madre has a community of older Americans who deserve recognition for their contributions to society, seniors continue to lift up our neighborhoods, offer perspective on pressing challenges, and serve as role models to our next generation, proving Americans never stop making a difference or giving back. And whereas the city of Sierra Madre recognizes that older adults are trailblazers, advocating for themselves, their peers, and their communities, paving the way for future generations. Now, therefore, the City Council of Sierra Madre does hereby proclaim May 2016 to be Older Americans Month and pays tribute to our parents, grandparents, friends, neighbors, and every senior near to our hearts. The Council acknowledges older adults and the people who serve them as powerful and vital individuals who greatly contribute to our community. Presented this 24th day of May 2016 by the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre, Mayor Jean Goss, Mayor Pro Tem Rochelle Arizmendi, Council Members John Capoccia, Denise Delmar, and John Harabedian. There you have it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I would just like to say a word, thank you so much. And Sierra Madre seniors do rock, and we do want to continue giving everything that we can to this wonderful community. And I would also like to say that Ann Tyler thanks you all very much for the recognition, and she is doing well. She was not able to be here tonight, but we will take the proclamation to her tomorrow. She's a very deserving individual, and thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't think I recognize that as Jackie Pergola from the Senior Commission. Okay, the next item is another presentation involving the Sierra Madre Civic Club. I think we're going to be giving some money away here, something like that.
Yes.
Sounds like fun.
You can join him, Mr. Mayor.
I have about 2 minutes talking. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Goss, council members. My name is Karma Bell. I'm the current president of Sierra Madre Civic Club. And I think there are some other Civic Club members here. Can you raise your hands? But standing here with me tonight at the podium is our philanthropy committee co-chair, Anita Thompson. As you mentioned, Ann Tyler is our founding member, one of our founding members. And since she joined in 1944, we have been a local organization dedicated to promoting unity and good fellowship. And our focus has been on civic, philanthropic, and youth welfare advancement. We volunteer our time to support community events such as the Huck Finn Fishing Derby, the 4th of July, Halloween window painting, to name a few, and you will see many of us helping this weekend at the Mount Wilson Trail Race. We are also a fundraising organization. From summer through spring each year, our members raise money in various ways. We sell pie and ice cream at a concert, confetti eggs at 4th of July, the community yard sale, and our traditional spring luncheon. The money raised is reinvested in our community through philanthropic donations to worthy projects and organizations, as well as educational awards to local high school seniors, which we did just a few weeks ago. Civic Club presented educational awards to 12 outstanding high school students on their way to a higher education. But what brings us here tonight is our philanthropies. Each year, Civic Club seeks requests from organizations, projects, or programs in need of philanthropic support, without which a program or project may not succeed. These requests come from our local, very valued organizations whose various projects and programs are not currently funded by the city or otherwise funded. Civic Club is pleased to donate over $23,000 this year to all the organizations that are on this poster in the front. Thank you for allowing us to come before you to share many of the wonderful and worthy organizations in town and some of the people who run them. We hope Civic Club has helped you reach your goals. And may I introduce Anita Thompson, our philanthropy co-chair, without whom none of this would have happened.
Oh, okay, but I'm not that powerful. It's all these people who earned the money. It's just my co-chair, Nan Carlton, and I who enjoyed the opportunity to facilitate a process that really beautifully gives every member an equal opportunity to vote away every dollar. So it's like there aren't any like caucuses somewhere. And so we're going to be distributing money that represents the values of the community as well as the values of the club members. I'm not sure. The list of players, as I'm sure everybody in public service understands, changes. So I'm going to ask the representative from the 4th of July committee, which, oh good, it has changed. All right, yay, one more time. Yes, you're more than welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to invite all the recipients to gather in the lobby after we've finished for a group picture. All right? Hey, I love seeing these faces out here. Sorry. I just saw some people I hadn't seen. And as representative from the CERT committee, the Community Emergency Response Team. Behind you. All right. Hi. Yeah. There are all these wonderful people who keep us safe. All right. And then I have City of Sierra Madre. I might be Meredith Keith getting this one. And we're sponsoring 4 of the Friday night movies. So, yay! My pleasure. And I have, Meredith, don't go too far because I think this one's yours too. We also are sponsoring the Mount Wilson Kids Fun Run. Yay! One of my, yeah. And that way the kids get free T-shirts, no fees, no anything, and we all get to get a heck of a lot of entertainment watching them run up the hill. My personal favorite. All right, Debbie Henderson might be here from the PTA. There she is. This is the elementary school PTA. We're fortunate enough to be able to buy you a library card. No, wait a minute. No, that's later. That's later. You're also doing that, but this is for the tarps. This is emergency supplies for the emergency preparedness fabulous program at the elementary school. So thanks, Debbie. All right. And Megan Tosh might be here from the library. Okay, let's just go with a generic person from the library. Hey, that's okay. I deliver. All right.
Here comes Tony.
Tony Buckner. How you doing? Good. And we're sponsoring 4 of the programs down at the library, one of which is One Book, One City. Yay, baseball. Yay. All right. Creative Arts Group. We're sponsoring a integrated natural history, art, and literature first grade art project, the Crocogators. Yay, go. All right, thank you. And the Sierra Madre Cemetery, Pioneer Cemetery. You have anybody from the cemetery? You're looking remarkably well. And these are funds to repair the fencing on the front and on the east side, so it's going to keep everybody in. Yeah. Okay. And we have an organization in Pasadena, the Women's Room, and Reverend Donna. Yay! We're buying much-needed shoes for some women and a love seat. All right. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. And right along that same kind of movement thing, Families in Transition representative. Okay. Families in all right. Is this Socorro? Yes. All right. Nice to meet you. And there were some kids identified who really needed some shoes. So. Thank you. And for all of you in the audience who don't know Civic Club, talk to one of us. Obviously, we do some really cool stuff, and we have a lot of fun. We work hard, and quite frankly, we make a big difference in this community. And I think I saw Susan McCarthy here, didn't I? Didn't I see you, Susan? All right, Reading is Fundamental representative. There you are. I thought it was you. All right. We're sponsoring Reading is Fundamental, and this is a program that gives every second grader in the Pasadena Unified School District 3 books of their very own. Thank you. Good to see you. Yeah, all right. And Darlene Traxler, on behalf of representing the Sierra Madre Lunch Program, here's money for birthday parties every month. And Debbie, you get to come back up here and get the funds for your library card. I should have given them to you at the same time. Too many envelopes. Yeah, this is for the middle school. Yeah. So when you're there Friday, no, it won't be there, but. All right. Yeah, thanks, Debbie. And from the middle school, I think we have Amy McLean, the orchestra leader. This woman is building a music program, and we're fortunate enough to give her funds to buy an alto sax. My pleasure. And also for the middle school, I don't know who's accepting the after-school sports program, but we're providing. Oh, that would be you. Hi.
Hi, Gary. Newsom.
Yeah, of course you are. I would recognize. I would recognize you anyway.
I love it. Thank you so much.
This is funds to carry on the expanding after-school sports program, and you know there isn't any way to have enough programs for for all the kids. So, yeah. And I'm sure you all know when something grows, you know it's working, right? All right. I'm not talking about your garden. Okay. Is Ward here from the play? Yes, he is. Hi, Ward. The Sierra Madre Playhouse has been something of an entity in our community that Sierra Madre Civic Club physically supports with every performance by going. And Ward always welcomes us, and he's taken us on tours, and we're very happy to contribute some money for your electrical system. Absolutely. Okay, and the Rose Float Association. All right, we're giving them funds to buy some shelving for their refrigerator unit so they have some flexibility and expand their abilities to keep those gorgeous flowers gorgeous. Hey, nice to see you. Yeah. And I'm just guessing there might be a representative from Convalescent Aid here tonight. Yay. Oh, Rita, all right. This is Rita Lamar. She's the Community Outreach Director. Did I do it? Yay.
Special, yeah, you're good.
Okay. As all of you know, Convalescent Aid Society is an operation that makes durable medical equipment available for no fees, and we're giving you money to restock your stuff.
Thank you very much.
And the Sierra Madre Historical Society might be Leslie Ziff? It is. And Norma. Hi. Aw, I'm like giving old friends money. Hi. Thank you. Ungrafted, right? All right. We're contributing money to your Richardson House project, which, yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah. It's a partnership with the city. They have the title, These People Do the Work.
Boy, that's for sure.
Thank you. And our final, but certainly not our least one, is the Pony League, Sierra Madre Pony League. Edgar. Hey.
Thank you very much.
We did it this year.
Yes,
huh?
thank you.
Yeah.
I guess it got in time.
These are contributing money for a new scoreboard down at Dapper Field. And since the one that's there is the original one, that's not too shabby. Yeah. So again, it is. Again, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, and you're welcome. And I don't think there are co-chairs for Philanthropy Committee yet.
I just want to say real quick, I think it's too late. I just wanted to say yay Civic Club.
Yay, Civic Club.
Okay, we'll give them a minute to clear out and then we'll continue on.
Can we address the public comment?
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess they all came for that.
I'm getting the impression, yeah. Did I get a score? We lost.
A lot of confetti, eh?
Yep.
That's what I said to you.
Right. Okay. Could someone maybe close the doors? There we go. Okay. Okay, we're going to continue on. Before we go to our presentation, there we go. Okay, we're still clearing out here. Before we go to our next presentation, I did want to go back and see if we can answer a few of the questions that were raised about the vacant houses for Mrs. Schilling, Mr. and Mrs. Schilling, and Mr. Jones. I don't know if there's any comment that we have that we can address.
I can share that the residents have been very proactive in reporting the situation to us. In addition, Councilmember Arizmendi, or Mayor Pro Tem Arizmendi, brought the issue to us also. Some of the questions we've been asked is whether or not we can, pass a law that non-U.S. residents can't purchase property. Of course, we can't do that. We're sort of precluded by federal law from doing that. I was asked whether or not we can pass a law that if you buy a house, you have to live in it. That's also not a possibility. But what we can do, and what we have been actively doing, is we do have property maintenance requirements where property need to be kept up in a decent looking condition. And we have achieved, in fact, one of the cases listed here was the branch that fell in the garage. We have been receiving cooperation from the owners of the property or their representatives to deal. You mentioned here the rats. We have been receiving very good cooperation when we notify the owners of the properties to come out and fix things. There are some situations where I think we were given a list of maybe 6 addresses that were vacant. When we did our inspection, only one of them was truly vacant. We are aware of one property where the owners are proposing to demolish it and build a new house in its place. Don't know whether they're owners or renters. Again, that's not something we regulate. But we do strictly enforce our property maintenance guidelines. I will look into this, the potential fire hazard next to, I think, is Mr. Jones's house, and the response he got from the fire marshal. We will follow up on that tomorrow. Because technically speaking, for it to be a fire hazard, it really doesn't have to be visible. For it to be a property maintenance issue only, that does need to be visible from the public right of way. But for it to be a potential fire hazard, it doesn't have to be visible from the public right of way. The fire marshal does have to deem it such, and then there's things we can do to abate it. So I'll follow up on that one tomorrow, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can we do questions at this point? I think we can. General.
Yeah, very quick.
That's up to the chair, yes.
Yeah, just a general question. Do other cities do more? Is it possible that we could do more to enforce maintenance of property, just in a general sense?
Other cities don't per se do more, other than other cities maybe have a proactive code enforcement program where there's a team of code enforcement officers who go block by block and identify property maintenance issues. Sierra Madre's never done that. That would be one way we could do more, is to be more proactive. We've always been responsive, where if we get a call, we go out and respond to it. That would be one way we could do more. But it would be a huge shift for, because Sierra Madre has never been proactive in that, actually looking for violations.
Can we put this on a future agenda so that we can discuss it and look at not just the street, but all the streets in Sierra Madre, if this is a trend, or I just would like.
We really wouldn't have any way to provide you data on all the streets because we don't know which ones are vacant, which ones are owner occupied.
I just
Okay.
would like it on the agenda so we
Sure.
know what our laws are, that we can go.
And what we can enforce.
And other people, if they're experiencing that in their neighborhood, that they can do that as well. Come up for public comment.
Yeah, and any other pending items, I know that some of them were mentioned today during public comment, and I know that I've asked the city manager to address some, but any other pending items or outstanding items that have been addressed that we could include as part of that discussion on a future agenda item?
Okay. All right, we'll move on to our next presentation, an update from Public Works Director Inman regarding water conservation and the city's water quality report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Your report for May, just to give you a brief history and catch you up for the last few months. When the conservation program began, or the state conservation program began in June 2015, almost 12 months ago, we met our conservation goal for that month, but since that time and through February, our cumulative conservation goal came in at a little over 16.5%. And as you know from previous discussions, that drew the attention of the state. For March of this year, we met our conservation goal for that month. That helps us, each month that we meet our goal, that brings our cumulative conservation rate up a little bit, as you can see from the numbers there in yellow. April, we exceeded our goal. So far for this month, it looks like we're exceeding our goal again. And if we continue in that vein, it looks like we're going to be up at about 21% in terms of our cumulative conservation. I did have a conversation with a member of the State Water Board staff who's in charge of enforcement of these issues. And I was pleased to note to him that we were currently exceeding our monthly conservation rate. And he said, well, that's nice. And then he asked us what our cumulative numbers are. So again, that's what the state is looking at, is the cumulative numbers. In terms of leaks, the story continues. We're still seeing a large number of leaks from our system. That continues without much change. In terms of water levels, we still are much better than we were when we shut our wells down. But notice the change here. We actually have seen the water level go down a couple of feet over the last couple of months. And that is with us actually recharging the aquifer with imported water. So we are not out of danger yet in Sierra Madre. Our water system, our water supply is still somewhat tenuous. Rainfall, there's a primary reason for why we still have water supply issues. So far this year, we have finally exceeded the rainfall from 2015, but we are still very much below the average rainfall for this area. Now, the big news for this week, of course, was the governor's executive order in which the governor directed multiple state agencies to start adjusting emergency conservation regulations. Interestingly, the very next day, those state agencies released proposed regulations. They'd already been working on these things. So it really was not too much of a surprise when we saw the new regulations. And essentially what the State Water Resources Control Board has done is they've changed the regulations, which were adopted on May 18th, and I believe they are currently with the Office of Administrative Law for review before they become final. But under the new regulations, local agencies such as Sierra Madre are allowed to develop our own conservation targets. The strict numerical percentage conservation targets that have been in place will remain as default regulations. In other words, if a local agency doesn't develop its own conservation target, they will still be operating under the numeric conservation target. Some specific water uses do remain prohibited under these regulations, such as excessive runoff, application of water to streets and sidewalks, irrigation after or during measurable rainfall, and we're still not allowed to irrigate turf in roadway medians. So, okay, how's this going to impact Sierra Madre? Well, first and most importantly, we can't say with any certainty yet. This is an item that we'll be bringing back to City Council in the near future for City Council action. But as we understand the new regulations, the way this is going to work is, first, we need to determine the total amount of potable water that will be available to the city for the next 3 years, assuming the rainfall is the same as it has been the last 3 years. We will need to get that water supply forecast from our district and from MWD. That's the information we don't have yet, so we cannot make a determination until we have that information. The next step would be to determine the average amount of water that the City of Sierra Madre produced in water years 2013 and 2014. That would be what we would call our demand. Our conservation target then would be the percentage of reduction needed to make demand equal to or less than the supply. Some things to consider as we start looking at these new regulations. You'll recall the governor declared this drought in January of 2014. Sierra Madre initiated Phase 3 conservation, or 30%, along with our moratoria on July 8th of that year. And it wasn't until April of 2015 that the governor issued his executive order directing the state agencies to come up with these guidelines that brought us to a 25% conservation goal. And so the conditions that led to the city adopting Phase 3 conservation have not substantially changed since July of 2014. Yes, we have started recharging groundwater with import, but by and large, and as noted earlier, even the groundwater supply has actually decreased slightly. So as we look at the new regulations and go forward to determine how we want to change what we're doing, if we want to change what we're doing, we need to keep in mind that conditions here in Sierra Madre have not changed or eased substantially, although we've heard great news from Northern California. So that is my presentation, unless you have any questions.
Okay, questions from the council?
So are we going to be getting a staff report asking for direction then as a result when the guidelines are finalized?
Yes.
Sir.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I do have a question. You talked about the water leaks are being the same. There was a point where we had an increase. So have
Sure.
we now just gone back to what we normally have?
Yeah, I think, yeah, okay, the microphone's working. Yes, we're up at a level approximating what we were doing back in the months between October and December of 2015. We're up at a high rate of leakage again.
Okay, so, but we're not putting the metropolitan water through our distribution system, right?
No.
Okay.
That water's going into actually right now we are not recharging the aquifer. We have shut down the MWD connection.
Okay.
So,
Can you explain why?
the deal that we've made and what we've gone forward with is under our modified adjudication, we're allowed to pump 940 acre-feet out of the East Raymond Basin. What we've been putting into the ground is the amount of water needed to make up the difference between the 940 acre-feet and what our annual demand would be. We would come forward and request direction from the council if we were to put more than that water in, because we would have to be paying for that additional amount of water, and that would be a considerable expense. And as I think I've mentioned before, there has been some discussion with my counterpart in Arcadia that they might be willing to help defray the cost of putting as much in as possible.
Yes.
So is Arcadia doing the same thing? They're pumping their adjudicated right under the 500-foot rule still?
That I can't say for sure. I don't know what Arcadia is doing right now. We don't have a communication on that level.
Yeah. Since, again, since you're not recharging anymore, is that what we attribute the drop in?
That may have some bearing on it, but we don't know that for sure yet.
So it looks like on the surface, the problem is that because we haven't had rainfall for several years, the aquifer is just not recharging, or it's recharging at a very small rate. It could be recharging at a rate less than what the adjudicated right is under the 500-foot rule.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Director Inman. And now we will go to the consent calendar.
Mayor, members of City Council.
But we have someone from.
Oh,
Sorry?
comments
Oh.
on the presentation?
I'm
We
sorry.
don't usually do that.
We
but-
don't usually do public comment, but Mr. Alcorn, please, please do so.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go on to the consent calendar.
All of the items except for item E, which was, pulled by Councilmember Capocha. Item 1A is adoption of Resolution 1632 approving the city's demands. 1B is a recommendation that the City Council authorize the purchase of broadcasting and sound equipment for the City Council chambers in an amount not to exceed $72,000. And item 1C is an award of bid for a telecommunications system and carrier services. The recommendation is that the council approve the agreement with Ring Central for an office plan purchase agreement, an initial equipment cost of $22,724 plus tax, ongoing monthly price of $3,626.07 for 36 months, and approve the professional services agreement in an amount not to exceed $20,000. At item 1D is the cancellation of both August city council meetings for the summer recess and authorizing staff to pay necessary expenses during that time. At 1F is consideration of resolution 1633 regarding city clerk compensation. This implements the council's direction at the previous meeting to compensate our current city clerk the same amount as the previous city clerk. At 1G is resolution 1634 authorizing submittal of applications for the Cal Recycle payment programs and related authorizations. And that concludes staff presentation. We'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, let's just take questions item for item, starting with A. B. C.
We have this updated agreement in front of us. What's different on here than what is in our packet?
If you, on page 2, under special terms and notes, it notes that the office products listed above are free for the first 4 weeks of the initial term.
I thought that was in the original one, wasn't it?
That was in, we noted it in the report, but the agreement that we had, they
Oh,
had
it didn't say
not-
that.
They
Oh,
hadn't given that to us. so
And
we
this
got
is
the
where it
agreement.
counts.
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
They said it, but they hadn't proved it. Now they've proved it.
Okay. Good, good, good. All right, thank you.
Okay, D, F, and G. So we take a motion for approval of the consent calendar minus the, oh, I'm sorry. You got me. Public comment on any item on the consent calendar.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council, and our lovely newly elected City Clerk. I am Nancy Schallenberger, your previous city clerk for 32 years, and a resident of Sierra Madre for 48 years. I was so disappointed the way the last meeting went with regard to the newly elected city clerk. Instead of warmly welcoming her, which is what should have happened, you told her if she didn't like the decisions made by the city council, she could resign. What are you thinking? Sierra Madre has an elected city clerk. Are you trying to make her so mad she does resign? What is going on behind the scenes? You should be thankful for her. She is the only one that ran. Nobody else wanted the job. Why do you think that is? Because it is a volunteer job. Maybe staff would like to have the department under their control. City council, that can't happen. If we don't have an elected city clerk, it will have to go to a vote of the people to change it. It was done about 40 years ago and did not pass. We like our independent, elected city clerk. You really need to apologize to Melinda Carrillo and thank her profusely for running. Give her a chance. Be thankful for her. This position to change will cost a lot more money than you are paying our new city clerk. When you have something that is working so well for so little, why would you want to change it? I understand you said you would agendize this item in 1.5 or 2 years. Has staff lied to me all these years? You can only discuss the compensation of the city clerk when she is up for re-election. What has changed? Please let me know. Also, I understand I signed a contract in 2008 which stated that the compensation of the city clerk is null and void upon my retirement. Please let me see that contract. I certainly hope that the conversation ends this evening and we don't hear anything further about the compensation of our elected city clerk. You have a bargain. Be thankful. Thank you.
Other public comments on the consent calendar? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Any comments?
I move that we approve the consent calendar minus item E.
I'll second.
It's moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I do have a comment, though.
Yeah.
Can we, the questions that were raised by Nancy, could we have the city manager look into those two comments about discussing the compensation only went up for re-election and the contract? Can we get that for Nancy?
The law regarding compensation only during the timing of it really only applies to city council members. There actually is a state law that you couldn't raise your compensation now. If it affects you now, it has to be so many years in the future. There's nothing in state law regarding, or local laws regarding city clerk. That pertains to the council. The state law and the city clerk's municipal and the city's municipal code are very clear that says the city council determines the compensation of the city clerk and the city treasurer and doesn't have any timing issues, i.e. tied to an election in the language at all.
And can we just go ahead and make sure she has a copy of that 208 contract?
There was no contract. Staff never stated there was a contract.
Okay.
So I don't know where that misinformation came from. There was never a contract. City clerk refused to sign a contract at the time. It was just council minutes and council action.
Okay, moving on. You want to tell us about item E that we've pulled from the consent calendar?
Item E is the recommendation to approve the purchase of 2 Public Works fleet vehicles using AB 2766 Mobile Source Reduction Grant Funds. Those are grant funds we receive from the AQMD that are restricted in nature. Really, the uses are pretty limited in what you can use those monies for. I went on the AQMD's website. Most cities use it for purchasing alternative fuel vehicles. Other possible uses could be installing maybe electrical charging stations in a public parking lot. Another city used it to subsidize bus passes, I believe, or roundabout passes, something like that. Those were really the only two other uses that were identified on the website. It's really pretty restricted. It has to, whatever the money's used for, it has to reduce the mobile air associated pollution. So staff, the other thing with these funds, if you don't use them, you lose them. The city could return these funds should the city council decide not to want to purchase these two vehicles. We can return the money. There's no obligation that we spend it.
The two vehicles we're replacing are not CNG, right?
Correct.
So this would actually be advancing clean air in a small way.
Mm-hmm. Director Inman can give you more information about the vehicles proposed to be replaced if the council's interested.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always concerned that, you know, a truck with 100,000 miles on it, I mean, I have a hard time understanding how that's worn out. And, you know, things like suspension and emissions are fixable. And in this case, the case to me is if we're really have no other alternative use for the money, then, you know, we just look at it that we're getting two new trucks for a small amount of money. That's a pretty good deal. But I wanted to make sure that this was the best use of the money. And if there is no other way to spend the money, then I suppose this is a good thing to replace these two trucks. But I mean, really, I think the math is simple. That's really was the question for me, is there a better way to spend this money? And if there isn't, then, of course, the other question is now that these are going to be CNG trucks, I mean, what's the impact on maintenance and depreciation and longevity of CNG trucks going forward?
And tag on that, where do we get the fuel?
We have a CNG fuel station that was built a few years ago at the maintenance yard. In fact, other entities, public entities use it and borrow it from time to time. They pay us back for the fuel. We do have a history with having a number of CNG vehicles in our fleet already because this is how we've characteristically used the money in the past. Director Inman can talk about the maintenance of them. I don't know about that.
Yes, we have a number of these vehicles in our fleet already. We've got transit buses, we've got several dump trucks, small dump trucks, we've got one pickup. They have served us well. They are more of a challenge, to be honest, to maintain. But what we're trying to do here is conform to AQMD regulations. As an agency with more than 15 vehicles in our fleet, we are required to provide as many clean fueled or alternative fuel vehicles as we can. And in regards to City Manager's Aguilar is absolutely right. There are very few things that we can actually use the money for other than vehicle purchases. And as I went through the guidelines from AQMD for the use of these funds, I found things like police bicycle patrols, traffic signalization, employer-based trip reduction. Some of those things, you know, they're going to reduce vehicle miles, but they don't seem to be things that are really going to be workable for Sierra Madre. So again, this is just something that we've been doing now for several years, husbanding these funds until we get enough to put together a purchase package for vehicles.
Any other questions?
I do. Can you explain why we need to get two and not just use the money for one at this point?
Well, again, it's one of those things where if you don't use it, you lose it, and we have been getting pressure. Our finance staff has been getting pressure from AQMD wanting to know, how are you going to spend it? We want to know how you're going to be spending this money, and this is how we've told them we're going to be going forward. But again, yeah, we could buy one truck.
And return the rest of the money.
And return the rest.
So why would we have to return the rest of the money? Because you can only use the percentage of it?
This is primarily an accumulated fund balance that we need to spend.
Okay, so how much is in the fund?
Oh.
About $92,000.
I was going to say 90,000,
We're spending
92,000.
almost all of what we have, yes.
Okay.
And just a question, Director Inman, for clarification, it must be a replacement. It's not that we can keep the existing vehicles and then add on and purchase 2 more CNGs.
We have to take the old vehicles out of the fleet. Those have to go away. And we will be happy to get rid of those 2 vehicles. They're not something we would want to keep around in any event. They don't have a lot of miles on them in terms of what you might expect for a pickup truck to wear out, but these have been heavily used, and they're heavily loaded much of the time. Utility boxes on these things get beat up from constant open and closing, and they're workhorses, and they're really showing the wear.
And you don't want to take it to Councilmember Capocha's garage for upgrade.
I'm sorry, I won't respond to that one.
And we can't use any of this money for maintenance.
No,
It has to
cannot be used
just
for
to the
maintenance.
vehicle itself.
One more question. What do we do with the salvage value? I mean, these trucks are worth something, because a lot of small independent companies, they grab these kinds of things at auction. What do we do with the
It's a
money?
revenue, it's a revenue in our general fund.
Oh, it comes to the general fund? It doesn't go back into the AQMD
No.
fund? Oh, that's good.
Nice. Okay.
Okay,
Any
well,
other
I'm good with
questions?
it.
Okay.
Open this up to public comment on item E in the consent calendar. Hearing none, I'll bring it back to council. Is there a motion in support of it?
Yeah, I'll move that we approve it.
Second?
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It passes unanimously. Okay, so now we move off the consent calendar to our first public hearing on Municipal Code Text Amendment 1601, Amendments to the Institutional Zone Ordinance, Chapter 17.38 of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code.
Okay. We do have, sorry, got distracted there for a moment. Director Gonzalez with a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Goss, members of council. The Planning Commission and staff are pleased to recommend to the City Council approval of Ordinance 1376, which updates the Institutional Zone Ordinance. The amendments reflect the continuing work required to translate the policies of the 2015 General Plan Update, and also to preserve the small town character of the community while allowing institutional uses. The amendments consist of a reorganization of Chapter 17.38, which includes the requirement to submit a master plan whenever a conditional use permit is required, while offering reasonable flexibility for repairs and minor additions and alterations without the need for a conditional use permit or master plan. The amendments also include updates to permitted and conditionally permitted, consolidating master plan objectives and requirements, revised development standards, and revised criteria for modifications to those development standards. Additional amendments include omission to the right to downzone from institutional to residential zoning, providing additional guidance for school conversions, and protects the village character, encourages water conservation measures, and protects hillside views and maintains commercial vitality. So some of the amendments that I wanted to go through today is the purpose and intent, and the institutional zone is primarily established to allow the public and private uses which provide services to the community, and those consist of schools, churches, and the Pioneer Cemetery. It also allows for the integration of adjacent commercially zoned property in the institutional environment, provided there is no net loss of commercial space. Other changes that were made include permitted uses. So it addresses general maintenance, interior alterations, and minor exterior and structural alterations that I had mentioned. Minor accessory structures in conjunction with permitted uses, on-site construction equipment and operations and storage, parks, playgrounds, recreation areas, open space, and signs. The conditionally permitted uses include the list that you see before you. I'm not going to go through the entire thing. Probably more important is the conversion of school sites identified in B, which is only allowed if the site is no longer needed for further educational needs for the city, and priority should be given to uses that fulfill open space and recreational needs of the city, such as, and without limitation, arboretums and botanical gardens, in determining substitute uses for school sites. We also made a significant changes to the plan objectives and requirements. These are a synopsis of those requirements, again, to convey the village theme in their setting, massing scale, and use of the open space, preservation of historic structures, and structures designed to a high level of architectural quality. And buildings and sites shall be designed to enhance the pedestrian character of the city. Again, landscaping shall be incorporated within the building design to reflect the overall visual character, incorporation of water conservation practices, and development north of the hillside view line shall protect the natural environment and views from change. And lastly, the project will not displace or enhance or encroach into the commercial district. Contents of a master plan were also extensively revised, and it's simply some of the master plan requirements provide a diagram encompassing all parcels owned or controlled by the applicant, and a plan showing all development on the site and any expansion, and a landscape plan. Coupled with that is the development standards. Significant changes were made there as well, and it addresses height and distance requirements, both in the residential R1 zone and also in the commercial zone. And there was another section regarding special design features that allows architectural elements to exceed the mandatory height limits provided there in keeping with the architectural style of the building. Special design features consist of architectural projections such as steeples or towers that contribute to the style of the building. We also addressed permissible lot coverages, looking at maximum coverage of all buildings. As you can see here, both in the R1 and the commercial zone percentages of lot coverage. R1 is 35%, commercial at 60%. Additional development standards addressed yards. They have to meet the setback requirements in the immediately adjacent zone. Facade should have compatibility and have architectural context with adjacent structures. Exterior lighting shall be designed to combine direct lays to the premises. Access and parking shall comply with requirements of applicable zones, including loading and landscaping. Modifications to development standards. These allowed for adjustments in the master plan, and they may be permitted based on these three findings: that the site contains activities and functions which will be a significant asset for the city, will adequately mitigate impacts attributed to any increase in floor ratio and height, and provide additional benefits to the community, such as making available parking to the public when not in use, dedication of on-site recreational space of parkland, facilities for public meetings, and childcare available to the public. The council has three alternatives before them in terms of making their recommendation. You can either approve for first reading, designating the city attorney to prepare a summary ordinance pursuant to Government Code Section 36933C1 of the proposed ordinance before you. You can introduce and approve for first reading by title only, also making amendments to the ordinance, or you can recommend denial. The staff recommendation this evening is to approve alternative number 1, that the City Council introduce and approve for first reading by title only, and waive further reading ordinance number 1376 in accordance with the proposed text amendments to Chapter 17.38, pursuant to Planning Commission Resolution 1602, and to designate the city attorney to prepare a summary of ordinance number 1376 pursuant to Government Code Section 36933C1. This concludes staff presentation. Planning Commission member John Hutt is also in attendance this evening and is available to make any or answer any questions that you have either for myself or Planning Commission.
Thank you, Director. Questions?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from John Hutt. I thought he wrote us a letter today, and I thought he really succinctly stated, why we're doing this. And I think it'd be a good idea if he just go over that again, just for the sake of the public, so they understand.
Councilmember Capocha, before you do, I actually have a question for
Okay.
Director Gonzalez, just really quickly, and then I'd like to hear from Mr. Hutt too, but just to be clear, are the changes all reflected in the red line that was provided?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and that helps because I think it's really good to look at the new changes versus what existed. So, to be clear, the height restrictions that are currently reflected were already there, correct?
That's
Those
correct.
weren't,
Right.
okay.
There was quite a bit of a reorganization
Got
of
it.
the entire chapter.
But I just want to make that clear is that in terms of the actual height and distance requirements, nothing was actually substantively changed, right?
No, that's
Okay.
correct.
Great, thank you. And no, I would agree. It would be nice to hear from Mr. Hutt, so.
Mr. Hutt. Commissioner Hutt, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Mayor and council members. Yeah, these amendments were unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission, and they basically fall into two different groups. One is policy changes to implement the updated general plan, and second is, as Director Gonzalez said, we really reorganized the chapter. If you look through the red line, there's a lot of redlining, but a lot of the actual standards didn't change. We just made the code section work a lot better. So on the general plan side, we deleted the concept of downzoning to residential, which y'all already did in the general plan, so that just follows directly. We provided the additional guidance for school conversions that Vincent read, and we also improved some of the findings with regard to the village character, conservation of water, which was a big thing in the general plan, protecting hillside views, and maintaining the commercial viability of the downtown area. With regard to the way we restructured it, one of the big things that, if you looked at the old code you found, is it never really required a master plan. And there was all this discussion of plans, which were named different things, but it wasn't really clear when they kicked in. So what we did is we went through and we made it really clear what you can do with just a building permit, and there's some discretion there given to the director. And then when you get to the conditional use permit stage, you have to have a master plan. If you already have a master plan and you're just adding on, you wouldn't need to do a whole new one, but you might update it a little bit. Then also the standards that were there were spread out in lots of different sections, and sometimes they were redundant as well. So we consolidated those all up into individual sections and made it a lot clearer. So that's really what we did. One standard that we talked about but we didn't implement yet is adding floor area ratios, and I think that's a really good idea, but something that's going to take us some time, and we wanted to get this through first, and so we'll come back on that. Also, we're working on, in a somewhat related topic, on group living facilities, and there's a lot of state-specific definitions, and some of that interacts with this, and once we get that all worked out, we'll come back and look at some of the conditionally permitted uses here and see if we need to change some of those terms, and we'll update it. So that's really what we did, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any you have.
I do have. The statement, the project will not displace or encroach into existing commercial uses. I mean, this is for something that's already designated as institutional now. How would that encroach into an existing commercial use? Are you saying if an existing commercial use on this type of a zoning is there, then it gets to retain its commercial use, or?
I think that's really more of a redundancy that's carried over from the general plan, that the idea is you're not going to do a zone change for commercial zone property to institutional zone property. And so I don't really think you're going to have a situation where you have institutional zone property that's commercial that we're going to say you can't use it as institutional if it meets the proper standards. It's really an issue that we want to make really clear that we don't want institutional uses to sort of grow and take over commercial uses.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this in context of the senior living facility across the street. That was commercial zone. Then we did the overlay onto it with institutional. Would this prevent something like that?
Well,
Or does the
I
council
think
still retain the right to?
Well, that, was a specific plan, so that can be done.
Okay.
You can do what you want in a specific plan, but also that kind of group living facility is sort of on the border between institutional and residential and commercial. It doesn't really have an exact thing, and that's one of the things we're now looking at with a lot of how these group living facilities are defined under state law and how we should treat them.
Yes.
But even there, you have the concept in the commercial zone where if you have to have retail on the ground floor facing the street, and then above and behind you could do residential or more institutional type uses.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Any other questions?
Just a general question. Would you say that now that this ordinance is in alignment with what was the intent for the general plan? And are there any items that are missing? I know you said you referred to the floor area ratio, but is this now in alignment with what the intent of the general plan is?
Yeah, and I think the floor area ratio is sort of icing on the cake. It's not really called for in the general plan. It's something that we just feel would be a good idea to help implement. So we don't really need that to align with the general plan. This will do it on its own.
Other questions?
Can you explain to those that may not know why we're going through this, what the general plan, so we did the update of the general plan, made those recommendations, the city council approved that, so now we have to go to the next step, which is actually putting things in our zoning and building to allow to carry out the general plan.
Sure. Last year we updated the general plan. We made a number of policy changes, and as the name implies, those were done generally, and so you say these are a good idea, we should do this kind of thing, and then when we go to update the zoning code, we actually go through all the little details and say, well, this is how you implement this general idea, and we put into more specifics on standards, design guidelines, findings, things like that.
So the general plan is actually kind of a living document, so it doesn't just sit on a little dusty shelf. We actually have to implement what's in there.
That's right, and this has to comply with that, and it does.
And I appreciate the Planning Commission doing that in such a timely manner, too.
Thank you. And I should say that, with the water moratorium, our calendar has been sort of light on projects, and I think staff has done a fabulous job on keeping us busy and keeping this stuff pushing through, and we've really made a lot of headway, and I think that staff's done a great job.
Thank you, staff.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hutt. Okay, let's open this up to public comment.
Okay.
Hearing none. Whoop. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Goss and council members. I'm Barry Gold, 441 Ramona Avenue. After 6 years, the General Plan Update Steering Committee, with input from our various commissions as well as the community, sent its final plan to this council for approval. Last July, this council not only unanimously approved the general plan, but you made improvements to it. The plan sets forth our goals for the next 2 decades. Among these goals are the preservation of the unique character of our town. After approval, you asked the Planning Commission to recommend code changes designed to support the updated general plan. I know that we all know this. We're all aware of the history. But I believe it is really important that we keep reminding ourselves that we are going through this process to protect and preserve that which we cherish so much, so that we do not wake up one day and find out that our small village is no longer what it used to be. Tonight, the Planning Commission is recommending code changes to our institutionally zoned areas. They have diligently and skillfully presented you with exactly what you directed them to do. The staff recommends approval of the Planning Commission's recommendations, and I urge you to approve these changes, which are consistent with and supportive of the goals of the general plan, which you all so wisely approved last July. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it back to the council.
Well, I, for
Discussion.
one, will
Right.
think the Planning Commission did a great job, and I would solely endorse the recommendation going forward. And I know they still have a lot of work to do, and I do appreciate you bringing this forward, Director, for the Planning Commission to work on.
Yeah, no, I think Planning Commission did a great job, and the organization now is much better. And I still think with the changes, it retains some flexibility so that to the extent that certain institutions will want to in the future do things within the master plan that don't necessarily comply directly with the development standards, through their master plan process, I think it allows the Planning Commission and the City Council to weigh in on it. So I think this is a really good development within our zoning code, and I thank the Planning Commission, and I think that the red line provided by staff was really helpful. So thank you very much.
I want to thank you for that, too. That was very helpful.
Yeah, it looks good to me. I wish I could improve it, but I can't. It's really good. So I'm really happy with the work that they've done, so I'm good with it as proposed.
Well, then I will move to approve for first reading by title only and waive further reading for ordinance number 1376.
If I could just quickly jump in with a quick comment. I wanted to compliment staff too. This made a lot of sense to me. And I thought it meets my test, the reasonable person test. I think this is a reasonable approach to the subject. And I just want to compliment everyone who was involved in this. I think did a great job on it. Now, we've got a motion on the floor.
And I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Fiscal year to item number 3, public hearings, fiscal year 2016-17 assessment districts. Public hearing resolution of confirmation 16-30 and 16-31 setting assessment rates. Radville maintenance districts 1, 3A, and 3B.
Mayor, members, City Council, you do have a report from our city engineer, Kev Tarkutian.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This item is a public hearing on the city's 8 assessment districts. At the last council meeting, you adopted resolution of intention to allow this resolution of confirmation to occur. The 8 districts that are the subject of tonight's meeting are the 3 districts, the direct assessment districts. 2 of them are in the central business district on Sierra Madre Boulevard between Baldwin and Lima, and on Baldwin between Montecito and Suffolk. The third district is the Carter 1 district for the maintenance of the storm drain system there. The 2 sewer districts are East Miramani and Bonita sewer districts, and finally the 3 lighting districts are the Ad Valorem districts, which are on the boulevard. Zone A and Zone B are on Sierra Madre Boulevard, and maintenance district number 1 is in Santa Anita and Arcadia area. Staff recommends that council approves adopts these resolutions. The second phase would be for staff to prepare. Once these resolutions are adopted by the council, staff would will begin the process of preparing the documentation to be submitted to the LA County Assessor's Office. At this point, staff is not recommending any changes, any updates on the charges. As you see in the staff report, all charges to remain unchanged. So staff's recommendation is simple tonight. Open the public hearing, receive input from the public, close the public hearing, and adopt resolution of confirmation 16-30 and resolution setting the assessment rates for the ad valorem maintenance districts as 16-31. This concludes staff report.
Okay, questions?
Yes, Mr. Charkoudian, thank you very much. Every year, we go through this process, which is essentially a process to not change the amount that we collect. And can you just explain to the public why we don't collect enough to meet the expenditures in each assessment district? And just briefly, so that, because if the public looks at this, every year we approve these, but it results in the city actually subsidizing the districts. And we do that for a very simple reason.
The main reason is Prop 218. Any changes in these assessment rates would require a ballot measure and 2/3 of the voters approving this ballot measure. Any increase would have to go through that ballot measure. In the past, the city council has entertained the idea of initiating those, but upon staff's recommendation, we keep these charges unchanged because of the Prop 218 requirements.
Essentially, the idea of being able to go out and be able to have a successful 218 vote to raise the rates to break even we think would be impossible and a waste of time and money.
Yes, there would be an initial cost to set up the ballots, and in the present climate, staff and council felt that would not be a wise decision to make.
Okay. Other questions?
Is it possible or legal for us to, once the funds have been expended, the revenue exceeds the expenses, that we cut off the service on these? Is that?
Well, basically, it would require to shut down street lights in the street lighting districts, not do maintenance on the downtown districts that would impact the businesses. I don't think that's not an option we have considered.
Yeah. So what, to avoid the administrative cost of this, what can we do? Just make it go away and just then subsidize the whole thing with the general fund? Is that the only option we have?
Well, I think there's still a revenue from these districts. There's a revenue from the downtown. The two districts that we're talking about are the parking districts and the landscape districts. These are the ones that are subsidized. The other districts, the lighting and the sewer districts, are doing fine.
Yeah.
They don't need any increases in the charges. So the two districts are the landscape district, and these are critical for the business district to maintain those areas for the public to enjoy the parking and the landscaping and the street sweeping, the lighting.
So this is about the least expensive way to handle it, is that you just take last year's report, change the dates, and bring it to us again, and you don't charge us.
I apologize. I didn't do a good job changing the dates because I wrote March 24th, so I apologize. I didn't even do a good job. So I apologize for that typo error.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll open this up to public comment.
The Alcorn and Grandview, it's not clear how much money are we talking about. Is it $5 or is it a lot of money or what?
$25,000.
Yeah, it's approximately $9,000 for the first landscape district and $18,000. Yeah, $25,000, $26,000 for the two districts.
Any other public comment? Okay, bring it back to council. Any discussion?
I'll move to approve.
Both resolutions?
Both resolutions.
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Did you close the public comment? Did I miss that? Did you close
I
the
did.
hearing? Yeah. Okay.
Did I? Yes, I did.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, you guys are keeping me on my toes. Good, I need that. Okay, item number 4, consideration of resolution 16-29, 24, resolution combining the library services and community services departments under one director and amending the classification plan and salary matrix to reflect positions in the combined department.
Assistant City Manager Cox has a staff presentation for you.
Good evening. As part of our mid-year budget review, staff brought a recommendation to the City Council to combine the community services and library services departments under one director. The City Council asked us to go back and receive input from the Library Board of Trustees, the Community Services Commission, and the Senior Community Commission, which we did on Monday, May 16th. We had a joint meeting of the three bodies. Myself, interim director Tony Buckner, and interim director Michelle Keith, along with City Manager Elaine Aguilar, were there to provide a presentation to the commissions and to answer questions and accept their input and bring back to the City Council. I should note that Council members Del Mar and Arizmendi were in attendance as well. As a little bit of background, we have vacancies right now in both the library and the community services department. In the library, it is our library services director, and in the community services department is our community services manager. Both of these positions are funded under market, and we've had trouble recruiting for both of them. And so the recommendation that staff has made to the City Council is to increase the director position and make it a director of not just library, but of library and community services, and increase the pay there, all the while decreasing the community services manager, downgrading it to a community services supervisor, and decreasing the pay a little bit there, so that there is no net cost to the city to change this reorganization. It's important to note, though, that as much as this doesn't result in a net increase in cost, it does hopefully save the city some money, because our alternative would be coming back to the City Council and asking for more money for these positions in order to go back and recruit again. The commissions and the boards asked a lot of really great questions, and ultimately and understandably, their biggest concerns is that one of the program or program areas in any one of the commissions or boards overseas could be diluted and not.
We've lost your microphone.
I see green.
It's back on.
Okay. As I was saying, the concerns from the commissions and the Board of Trustees is that any one of the program areas could be diluted, and that we would see a decrease.
Battery's probably down.
James is looking for another one. I'll keep trying. A decrease in programming, and that's not just I apologize. Okay, so the concerns from the commissions and the Board of Trustees is that there would be a dilution of service in any one of the program areas. We really hope in this proposal that that is not the case. Our goal in bringing this proposal to the City Council is that we do provide and create a stronger department, having both community services and library services together. But as you know, there are no guarantees. What we did talk about with the commissions and the board, and what they asked for, is that we provide the opportunity to come back in 6 months or before mid-year budget next year, so that the commissions and the trustees can give input to the City Council on how this is working. And if it is not working, that we can take a look at making another change. Staff thought that that was a very good idea, and we support that. We support that idea. And with that, the consensus of the three bodies, and I should note that all the members from all three bodies were in attendance, which I think is a huge testament to how important this is to each one of these areas. But the bodies did come to consensus that they would cautiously support this idea, and with the understanding that the council knew what the concerns were, and that they were given the opportunity that, in the next 6 months or before the next year mid-year budget review, to provide input on how this is working. So with that, I conclude my report, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I do note that there are a number of commissioners and trustees in the audience if you would like to hear from them.
My only question is this any different than what you brought before us in the last meeting? It looks the same to me.
It is the same as what we brought forward. The difference is we're bringing you the input from the Board of
Right.
Trustees and the commissions.
Any other questions for staff?
No questions.
Okay, let's open this to public comment. Hearing none. Let's bring it back to council. What do you want to do with this?
You know, I would love to hear from the council members that were there, to the extent that you guys want to share. It sounds like everything was covered, but anything else?
And I can comment. Again, I think Assistant Manager Cox covered most of it, but there was really good discussion. I want to really underscore the fact that this was not just, oh, we love it and it's great. The question of dilution of services came up numerous times, and I think that was very clear. And I think that will be addressed, we hope, through the evaluation of a mid-year assessment of sorts. And I'll just comment for myself that, you know, I don't think there's any secret that I was for this last time we met because of, I see that it will be increasing efficiencies. I think it's important to also note that there are the same number of FTEs, so it's not a decrease in the number of staff that will be providing services. It's just how the organizational structure looks and how the function and form flows. But, you know, again, I'm in support of this, and the fact that the commissioners had a say in it, and I think there's question as to, you know, was this the best process with it coming to council first? And, you know, there's question as to timing of it because of the opening in the rec and service and community services area. So I'm glad that we took the time to actually take the input of the commissioners, because I know that it was really of concern, and I'll just kind of speak on behalf of the senior commission, that they felt that they always get ignored and their voice isn't heard. So it was a really great opportunity for all the commissions to speak. And I think, I don't know if it was during that joint session or maybe afterwards, comment about whether we can consider a joint session maybe once or twice throughout the year, because again, the value of that discussion from all the commissions in overlapping areas, I think, was a value.
I agree. I was very impressed that all of the members showed up. It was very short notice. I think like within a week the meeting was held, and they were all there and they were all active and participated. I think what I got out of it, and I think what a lot of the folks did, was we kind of looked at, there was a change in the way the library is being run and community services over the last few years. So we don't have the website being managed by the library services. We don't have the waterworks. We don't have the recreation. So there is a shift in what those services are doing, and this seems like a way to perhaps make all three stronger, and that's what I got out of it. I know that we had a lot of people who felt that one of the services would be diluted, but I really don't think so. I think going forward we'll actually have, you know, a stronger library and stronger community services, a stronger senior commission. It also gave us the opportunity for all three of the commissions to work together and see all the activities that overlap. So I would be really in favor of having that joint commission meeting at least once a year to listen to those. I do want to make sure that we do evaluate this. It was a very strong request from every single person that we evaluate this in 6 to 9 months to see how it's doing, so we can hear from the commissioners, hear from the community if any other programs are suffering because of the combination.
And I'm sorry, just one thing I wanted to add too. I think it was really helpful to have interim or temporary librarian Tony Buckner there and interim Michelle Keith there, because they're operating in these positions right now, and they were able to see from their perspective as how this new structure can work, and again, focusing on the efficiencies of it. So I think it brought credibility to the conversation, and it was helpful for the commissioners to hear also.
My only comment is that it's something a little bit new, a little bit unorthodox. I see that other cities are doing similar things. But I was concerned in the last meeting that our commissioners weren't involved, and I'm very heavily influenced by the fact that there was apparently a consensus among all of them who were here for that meeting. So that's good enough for me. I think the consensus was we'll move forward cautiously with an eye on reevaluating it at some point, and I think that's probably the right way to go.
Great. I don't have much to add. I appreciate the hearing from council members Delmar and Mayor Pro Tem Arizmendi. I agree with the mayor. Well said. If the commissioners are okay with it, that to me was the only outstanding question in my mind. So.
And I agree. Let's do it.
Can I just thank staff for pulling that together so quickly and getting everybody there? And it was really well run and very informative. So thank you. I know that was hard to put that all together.
Okay, so is there a motion in support of this?
I move to approve resolution number 1624.
And I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Can we take just a little break?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back. We will be moving on with item number 5 under items for discussion, water system financing options and monthly utility billing.
Mayor, members of City Council,
Can we get order, please?
I will be doing the staff presentation on this item. We do have a PowerPoint presentation. As you are aware, this is a very important, significant item. I think one of the more important decisions you'll make as council members pertains to, I mean, there's a lot of important decisions you make, but this one pertains to the city's water system and coming up with we're working towards strategic plans in a number of areas. One of them is regarding our water system, our water supply, our water utility. And also making sure that I added on their short-term deliverables, because whatever we decide to do eventually, we do need to start working on our water infrastructure. The staff was asked to bring back a report regarding what the financing options, as with most problems or issues, it takes resources, generally financial resources, to deal with them. Tonight, there's a number of options for the council. They're complicated, they're detailed. It's staff's goal to provide a very high-level overview of the various options. You'll note that we do not have, while the presentations from each of the companies is included in your agenda packet, we did not include time tonight for formal presentations from each of the companies, because it would literally take a full day to go through all of the presentations. But representatives from everyone except the public-private partnership, Viola, is my understanding, is in the audience. He is? Okay, he is here. I was told earlier he wasn't. So somebody from everyone in your packet tonight is in the audience should you have technical questions and want to hear from them. Again, staff wasn't envisioning that in-depth discussion. We would like the council, though, to select some alternatives that you're most interested in for staff to evaluate further. We actually do recommend you schedule a special meeting for the company representatives for those alternatives to make complete presentations to you, answer questions, etc. Staff can also return with further analysis, in particular financial analysis. While staff has provided its preferred alternative, we did not envision the council making a final decision this evening, because we do want the council to have all the alternatives come back to you that you're interested in reviewing further. The other thing we would like the council to do this evening is to direct staff regarding what other next steps. This is a significant decision. It pertains to quite a bit of money is involved in this decision. The council may want to have sort of special community outreach, targeted outreach, something to get the public, to have a few more people in the audience than we have here this evening, to discuss the future of our water system and how we pay for the backlog of maintenance issues in our water system. The current status of the system, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. As you're aware, we have deferred maintenance, a backlog of capital needs in our water system. The staff report identifies $13.2 million of 91 water main segments that are 75 years or older. Now, that number does not include other maintenance issues. As you're aware, we've talked before about the need to upgrade our main plant at the maintenance yard. We've talked about the possible need. We eventually are going to need a new well. We've also discussed in the past maybe perhaps a new well in a different aquifer where we have rights to the water, but we don't have a way to get the water from there to here. So this $13.2 million is really just the water main segments. But as you're aware, there's a lot other, quite a few other financial needs that the water system has. The council's also discussed over the past about looking at monthly water billing with the goal of improved customer service. One of the things that the council's discussed in the past is AMI. The cost of the system is about $1.3 million for that. I'll go through a slide in a moment that provides some background information so that the public knows what that is. But having an AMI system would allow us to implement monthly water billing. It has a lot of other benefits to it. Council wanted us to bring back monthly water billing, so that's another piece of this puzzle. Another piece of it is our last rate study was done in 2013. As you're aware, the water utility, when that rate study was done, we were not at the 32% mandatory conservation that the governor has subsequently imposed. We were not even at phase 3 water conservation when this study was done. So consequently, as our customers have conserved water, our revenues have not come in according to how that water rate study had originally predicted our revenues would go in. As you're aware, our water utility is not in the financial position we were hoping it would be at this point in time, and it is entirely due to the increased conservation. The last thing is debt. We hear a lot of talk about our outstanding bond debt. We have about $8.2 million outstanding. Our annual debt service payment is about $850,000. That debt was originally taken out. The city put, I'm going from memories, probably $20 to $30 million into infrastructure about 10 years ago, rebuilding reservoirs, rebuilding the Miramonte distribution center. So those bond funds are spent except for what the city is legally required to keep on reserves. But the last time the city embarked on a major infrastructure program, the city did secure, sold bonds in order to come up with part of the funding in order to successfully achieve that endeavor. Okay, let's make this go forward. Why did... Okay. I mentioned earlier, wanted to talk just a few minutes about what this advanced metering infrastructure goes by the initials AMI. It's something the council has evaluated in the past, but the costs were always too much for the current water utility finances to be able to absorb. It was discussed the last time we did the 2013 rate study, but it would have added another $1 million into the capital projects that were part of that rate study. And so at that time, the council decided to defer implementing this project. In the meantime, the council regularly hears about it's difficult for customers to conserve water if they don't know how much they're using, because they don't get their bill sometimes for 30, 90 days after they've actually used the water. There's technology out there very similar to the gas company, electric company, where you can monitor almost in real time what your water use is, so that you don't have this surprise 60 days later with a water bill. The system will allow improved leak detection, and I'm talking private customers' leak detection. The systems can be set up so that if all of a sudden a customer's water use just shoots up more than what is normal for that property, they can get a text message that says there's something going on. Your water use has, increased 100%. Right now, as you're aware, it's possible for someone to have a leak on their property and not know about it until 30 days, 60 days later when they have a huge water bill. They look into it and find out they've had a leak for 3 months. Currently, it is a fact that older water meters, best way to run slower. They don't accurately measure the amount of water going through the meter. When the city does change a meter, it's not unusual for us to receive a phone call in the next billing cycle. Something's happened, my water bill has gone up. The older water meters aren't as accurate as new water meters. So that is lost revenue to the city. If it's not measuring all the water that the customers are consuming, that's revenue, lost revenue to the city. It's not revenue we're getting for producing and distributing that water. Part of the AMI infrastructure are our brand new water meters installed along with the AMI infrastructure. The increased operational efficiencies, it will reduce staff time. The staff report included quite a bit of information about the amount of time it takes us in staff time to read water meters. That's the main reason why we have every other month water bills. Every month, the staff is busy generating water bills for one half of the town. The next month, they do the other half of the town. The time of reading meters, the time of once the meter reads come in, rereads because there's something unusual that pops up, the customer service associated with mistakes, errors that are made. So we'll reduce staff time and reduce errors. It also allows us to go to monthly water billing. The system, we can generate a water bill basically whenever the city wants to generate a water bill, as simply as going to the computer and pressing a button and generating a water bill. Because things are read electronically. We're not out there manually reading meters and taking numbers off of the meters. We'll also get, one of the things we get asked a lot about, they call it non-revenue water. It's water that's produced but not sold. Another word for that are leaks. It's called, in the water, it's a euphemism, non-revenue water. It's a euphemism, non-revenue water. It's water that's produced because we pump it and we send it out into the system, but it's not measured through a meter anywhere because it's a leak. So this technology will also allow us, we can know exactly how much water we produced in a period of time, meaning pumped, and we'll know exactly how much water customers used. And the difference between those numbers is non-revenue water. We looked at basically there's two alternatives. There's actually a third one of the AMI alternatives. You have a proposal. All of these are, I should mention, all of the proposals in your staff report are very preliminary. They're rough estimates. We really wanted the council to become familiar with what the alternatives are and direct which ones you'd like to see come back, and then we'll dig a little deeper into the numbers and into the proposals. So they're all very preliminary. One of them in your agenda packet is the Ferguson Aquarius Waterworks proposal. We would be purchasing the AMI system, the water meters. They install them. It's about a $1.4 million cost. Because of the savings involved in the new system, the system will pay for itself in less than 8 years. Another alternative is the Fathom. We call it a utility partnership. In that case, they're actually installing the AMI system, which includes the new water meters, and completely taking over all water billing and customer service on behalf of the city. So we would be sort of contracting out that portion of the city's water utility operations. The very preliminary cost is we'd be looking at a cost of about $864,000 a year compared to the city's, their estimated cost of what it costs us today of $931. It's important to note that that $931,000 includes their estimate of that water revenue loss due to inefficient meters. Because I don't want anybody to think it actually costs us almost $1 million just to do water billing, because it doesn't. Which results in an annual savings of about $66,700 annually. The last alternative, of course, would be to purchase the software, the equipment, and use city staff to install everything. We do not recommend this alternative. We don't have enough staff to do this, and if the council wanted us to do that, we'd be looking at 2 years, 3 years to complete this project. So I mention it, but it's really not a feasible option. Of these alternatives, in this situation, staff is recommending the first one, the Ferguson Aquarius Waterworks proposal, is the one that staff feels is the most advantageous for the city at this time. I should mention, the other one pertains to, we don't know for the Fathom that the community's ready to call, it's a call center. If somebody has a question regarding a water bill, they're calling a call center that handles calls for all the other cities. They have quite a few cities, and not just in California, but they'd be calling into a call center to get assistance and information. So just didn't feel comfortable with going that route at this point in time. Also concerned if the estimate of water revenue loss of $363,000 is off, let's say that might be too high, our possible savings could be diminished greatly or even disappear, because that number's in that factor. When it comes to financing, how do we pay for the $1.4 million AMI infrastructure, for the $13 million in water mains that need to be replaced? Staff has two options. Both of them are debt. One of them is our bonds, refinancing our bonds, issuing new bonds essentially. And the other one is taking out a loan with a capital corporation. First, I will cover the bonds. I want to emphasize again that in both of these options, all of the details, the total amount borrowed, interest rates, depend on what the interest rates are at the time we actually sell the bonds in this particular situation. The bond debt payments or the loan debt payments are going to be based upon how much money the City Council ultimately directs us to borrow, per se. So again, these are very preliminary, just for discussion purposes. Ultimately, there's a lot of details that need to be worked out. We have two bonds. One of them is actually going to be completely done and paid for 11/1/2018. Our 2003 bonds, we're currently only paying interest on. In 2019, when our 1998 bonds are paid off, we will be paying principal and interest on the 2003 bonds. Currently, we're paying about the water fund is paying about $850,000 in bond payments. It come around to 2019, when the 1998 bonds are completely paid off, our bond payments will actually decrease to about $650,000 in bond payments once the first bonds are paid off. Excuse me. Based upon today's rates, it is possible to refinance these bonds and sort of free up or have some extra financing available to the city. The maximum amount based upon what the water finances could support are about $20 million, $21 million. That's the most. The council could always choose to issue bonds in a lesser amount. That's just the most that was recommended by the team we met with regarding what our water system could support. So that, of course, would be sufficient to fund the AMI, fund the $13 million in water mains, and have some extra money left over to tackle other issues. And again, annual debt payments would vary depending upon interest rates and how much debt the city decides to issue. There is another, we do have another loan we're paying on. It's the San Gabriel Valley Water District loan. That is at 0% interest. It's paid off 6/30/21. We do not recommend touching that one because you don't get much better than 0% interest. The other alternative, different than a bond, you understand where the city's issuing bonds, it's a security, we're selling bonds. The other alternative is to go through a capital corporation. We met with Holdman Capital Corporation. This is a loan. It's a loan. It's just a loan. The amount the city borrows would be very flexible. Their proposals included estimates of borrowing between $15 million to $18 million. Both amounts, and again, it could be a lesser amount should the city council desire. It would be sufficient to pay off our current bonds, fund the AMI, and have the $13 million for the water mains. It's important to note, you notice, we go to the next slide, the pros and cons, because the loan is a 20-year loan, that's a maximum they will do. The most we can borrow under this scenario is $18 million versus, remember, the bond number was almost $21 million. The difference there is really the difference in bonds are 30 years, and this loan would be 20 years. And it's a function, again, of what the estimates are at this point in time of the debt service that the water fund could financially absorb. The staff report included some of the pros and cons, and this is why staff preliminarily is recommending the loan. On the bond side, one of the largest advantages to a bond is we could borrow more money. The city water utility could borrow more money under that alternative. It has a longer repayment period, so you can borrow more because you're paying it back over a longer period of time. The cons would be the higher issuance costs. It does cost money to issue bonds. There's the trustee fees, the bond disclosure. There's also compliance costs. The city's required once a year to file information. We have to file reports with Moody's and all the investment people that track city investments or city bonds. So the compliance costs are primarily staff time in submitting all the reports that are required annually regarding the city bonds. One of the other bonds always come with covenant requirements. As you're aware, we have the infamous, we have to stay at 1.2, I believe it is, debt service coverage. Anytime you issue bonds, there's always some covenants because they want to protect the investment for the people purchasing the bonds. So they want to make sure the city doesn't incur too much debt, things like that. So there are the covenants that come with bonds. The loan, the maximum is less than the bonds, about $18 million. There is a low issuance cost. It's $5,000. The interest rate is fixed over the life of the loan. There's quarterly payments versus twice-a-year payment with bonds. So you, in essence, if you do the numbers, you end up paying your interest and principal a little quicker because you're doing quarterly payments, just like your mortgage. If you double up on your mortgage, paying quarterly payments versus biannual payments. The cons to a loan is it is a lower amount of capital financing available and the shorter repayment period of 20 years. And there are no bond covenants with the loan. The last alternative, this one is very interesting because it actually, in and of itself, does not require the city to take out any new debt, except that once you see the numbers, the city would need to also, would be a combination of this and also taking out some debt in order to come up with the amount of financing we've preliminarily discussed as necessary. This is a public-private partnership. We basically would completely outsource the management, operations, maintenance, capital improvement projects. The city retains ownership of the assets, our water rights, our rate-setting authority, but a new entity would be created, such as a joint powers authority that acts on behalf of the city. This joint powers authority then would contract with an operator. In this case, the operator is Veolia, to actually operate the system. This new entity, the JPA, would collect all the rate payments from the customers, funds operations, funds capital. The new entity would essentially be able to make payments back to, it's sort of like a lease, would make payments back to the city, either the general fund. The proposal talks about most cities, when most cities entered, Rialto was an example, their general fund was in really dire straits, so they entered in this agreement so that the general fund could receive an infusion of cash. In Sierra Madre's situation, we probably would recommend that the cash go back to the water fund to help fund additional capital improvement projects, but it doesn't have to be that way. That money could come to the general fund for other general fund purposes. Based upon very preliminarily our current rates, what it currently costs us to operate our systems, the upfront payment is estimated at about $7 million. In Rialto, it was $35 million because they're just a much larger operation. So the upfront payment would be about $7 million, and then there would be annual payments for the life of the contract at about $300,000. This is where I mentioned, the other options we're borrowing $15 million to $20 million, depending on the option. The $7 million wouldn't even be enough to pay the $13 million in water mains that we need to be replaced, which is why I mentioned this alternative isn't a total solution in and of itself, but it would result in the city potentially borrowing less money. But we are essentially turning the water system over to someone else to operate completely. We did have a chance. Rialto is the last city that entered into a concession arrangement for the operation of their water utility. And just to give you an idea of the complexity, and I don't want this to scare you off, but the city manager over there said the agreement alone is 2,200 pages. So it's a complex transaction. That is 4 reams of paper. So it's a complex arrangement. Rialto is the city closest to us that we could call to see how it's working. They did indicate that they received the cash, but they were a little disappointed. They're about 3 or 4 years into the contract, and the capital improvements that were part of the contract have not been initiated yet. And I don't know the details for the reason why. that there were some bumps. Anytime you transition to a different service provider, there's some bumps along the road, some customer service issues, et cetera, that are working themselves out now that they're in about third or fourth year of this arrangement. The last piece of the puzzle, and there's no action you need to take on this either tonight. We have mentioned in the past that we do need to undertake a new water rate study that will be included in our next fiscal year 16-17 annual budget. We will come to the council at a later date regarding the details of that study. For example, do we continue with tiered rates? Do we go to water budget-based rates, et cetera? That will come back to you at a later date. But ultimately, this strategic plan is going to include a combination of an infusion of cash of some sort, whether it's a bond or a loan, in combination with our rates and a rate study and getting funds into the water fund through rates, and a combination of those two working together to shore up and catch up on the deferred maintenance on our water system. That concludes the presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions and would like to get some direction from the council regarding which of these alternatives you're most interested in and what you would like us to do next.
I have a question. Very helpful and informative presentation. Thank you. First on the AMI piece, I thought I remember that the gas company or one of the utilities was rolling out some sort of AMI program that we had looked at, and I think it was cloud-based, perhaps. Did that, are they still doing that? Is it still available, or?
I believe they're still doing that. In fact, I believe they have done that. I believe it's in effect in Sierra Madre at this point. Whether or not that's still an option that's available to us, I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't remember how cost-effective it was, but I do remember them perhaps fronting a fair amount of the costs or giving us some sort of deal. It was probably a year ago that we even considered it. So
I think it's actually even longer ago than that.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
Unfortunately, I've forgotten all of the details of that. I don't know if Deputy Director Reynoso remembers those details any better than I do, but do you recall that? Is that something that you can speak to?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The only thing I recall was that the gas company was asked by the Public Utilities Commission to make their system available to water agencies so that they can gather the reads. But that was it. We would have to contract with the gas company to see if that option is, or contact the gas company to see if that option is still available.
Okay. Yeah, maybe something to look
And the
at.
city would still need to purchase all of the meters, the radio read portion of it,
Okay.
the software to interact with our billing system.
Okay. Thank you. I have questions on the other part, but AMI, that's all. I have.
On AMI,
Yeah.
the staff report said we didn't consider the cloud-based.
That's my question.
Okay, that's what we talked about, I think the last time we discussed this, because one vendor used Verizon, I think. Is that the cloud-based one? And why is not, that's.
I believe that was the gas company model,
Uh-huh.
was using Verizon.
Okay, but you don't see that as a, I didn't think that was a gas company.
No,
was it?
why are we not considering why are not,
Yeah.
you said in the staff report it's too expensive for the cloud? So,
Well, here's what I'm wondering is, I think this isn't a question of whether we're going to do this, it's a question of when we're going to do it, because the gas company does it, Edison's doing it, and I think in a situation where we have limited resources, water is scarce and going to be more expensive. So it's going to happen eventually, but so when you're thinking of timing, I mean, one thing is the technology mature? Is it still coming down in price? I mean, the bulk of the cost looks like it's for the meters, right? Is that
Yes.
a fair statement?
Correct.
So is the technology mature where there's no breakthrough technology that's going to decrease the cost? I mean, we don't see anything on the horizon. I thought maybe this cloud-based stuff would be using the cellular phone system. That seemed like a pretty good way to do it, so we didn't have to build towers. So why is that not viable?
One of the things that has been included in more than one of these proposals that we've received is, let's call it some insurance against changes in technology. These firms will stand behind the technology that they are installing for us, and as that technology changes, they will provide those upgrades or updates as needed. So that's one of the options that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So we have a number of components to this tonight, and I'm kind of wondering what the council thinks about the proper way to approach this. Should we talk tonight about maybe re-agendizing some of these things in a particular order, combining some of them in a special meeting? So obviously, we're not going to be able to go plod through all this at this time in the evening to make any decisions. So what is the?
I have some thoughts on that, but I'm just wondering if we should do our questions first and hear from the public, and then, you know.
That's fine.
I was just thinking in terms of, before we get into the questions, we could probably save ourselves some time, but maybe we should do questions on anything that we want to do right now on all that report.
Well,
So
it's
let's
just,
finish that.
for me personally, I'm not going to ask very many questions because I'm thinking just
Okay.
the same thing, is that we need to do this later in a more comprehensive way.
Yeah, then, with that in mind, I'll keep mine brief too, so.
Any other questions?
I actually have one question. When is our, the financial diagnostic tool, that report, when is that going to come back?
That is probably 6 to 9 months out, approximately.
Okay. I thought it was going to be sooner than that.
We've lost some finance staff. And it's sort of
So it's not
delayed
going to come
us.
back within the 3 months?
No, not within 3 months. 6 months.
And, well, since we're on questions, one, I'm just going to limit myself to one. I've got a bunch in my mind. The loan maximum amount for our city, did you get a number from them?
Yes.
And what was it based on?
It was based upon how much of a debt service payment the city could reasonably afford.
They have some kind of
And
formula?
it was, yes. The maximum amount was 18.7 million.
But
No,
that
go ahead.
assumes a rate increase though, right? I mean, when they say how much is reasonable.
All of the alternatives assume some rate increase.
Okay,
right.
so these, the bond and
There has
loan
to be.
companies have figured in what they think might be reasonable as far as rate increases to support that?
Very conservatively.
Yeah.
They have to make some projection out into the future.
Then I do have a question, just in terms of loans to cities, is that a common practice? I mean, we hear of bonds and that's a regular practice, but loans itself, is this something that other cities have done? Is this something that is
Yes.
recommended? Okay. And Holman, the company that you spoke with regarding loans, have they specifically worked with municipalities?
Yes. They specialize in federal government, state government, municipalities, and nonprofits, I believe. And it would be something, if the council is interested, we're presenting the general idea. As we go forward, if the council wanted to, we could put out an RFP, see who else is out there, who give us better rates. This is just to present the concepts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
This will be my last question. On the revenue stream that would pay back for a bond or a loan, I know we talked about the water rates. Is there any, I guess, could you also not only increase the water rate a bit to provide some revenue, but also try to do, at the same time, some sort of parcel tax assessment that would potentially try to pay for it as well? Because I know that's potentially an option, but it seems like the water rate increase through a 218 process might actually be easier.
The answer is yes. It's always an alternative to do some kind of parcel assessment for infrastructure. That's an alternative that wasn't presented in the staff report, just based upon, when it comes to parcel taxes, staff would need some more direction. Council's talked in the past about a public safety or a library parcel tax or a street parcel tax. The chances of having all 5 of or 3 or 4 of those pass is probably pretty small. So we were being very conservative and we didn't, but that is always a viable option, is a citywide tax of some sort for water infrastructure.
So the way that would work is that would provide revenue in addition to a rate increase. You'd have 2 different increases in revenue. So would that raise the cap on what we could actually do here if we approach it that way? Because my main concern is that we're only talking about $18 million worth of improvements when we've got double that in the system. I know maybe we can't get to that full amount, but.
Well, I think one of the things to consider is even if we were to, the basic answer is yes, a deal could be structured where there's a combination of an assessment to pay back assessment can be used to pay back a very large bond issue. Bonds need a revenue source to pay them back.
Right.
The assessment could be the revenue source, and it could be a very large bond issue. The reality is, though, the amount of time it takes to engineer and plan these projects, I would be concerned about borrowing $100 million, because that's making up what the system needs. We would not have the capacity to build that in 3 or 4 years. We have the capacity to handle about 13, 14 million probably in 3 to 5 years, but not something larger than. We just don't have the capacity to do it. The disruption to the town, there's things that you should consider. So we were thinking of something that's reasonable over the next couple of years. One of the benefits of the loan is the council could 5, 6, 7, 8 years, even with the bonds, could always refinance again. Our current bonds have been refinanced. I've done the history on them. The original ones date back to the 60s. So it's something that you can do in the future when we get over this backlog and spend whatever, whether it's loan funds or bond funds, you can always, depending on the finances at that time, refinance or borrow additional money. But I just want you to be aware of just the capacity to construct these improvements.
Another question here.
You know, we've got roughly 13 million that we need for water main replacement for all the water mains that are over 75 years old. Are some of those not, right now they're not problems? I mean, they're not leaking yet, or? Yeah, they don't fall into the.
Yes, some of them, not all of them are frequent leakers.
So here's, it just seems to me, again, from an engineering point of view, when you install this stuff, it has a 75-year expected life. And I'm guessing that some fail sooner than 75 and some longer than 75?
That's correct, yes.
So, but at about roughly on the average over time at 75 years, is that when it becomes more expensive to fix the leaks than to, commit to another 75 years to replace the pipe?
I'm not sure I follow the question,
Well,
but it's.
How do you make a decision whether to invest, because it's really expensive to replace the
Yes.
pipe. And you can tolerate a certain amount of leaks, but the cost of the capital might be higher than the repair of the leaks.
I think probably the best way to envision this is most cities do base it, everyone I've ever worked for, on how old it is. Because the reality is, once it gets up to that 75-year mark, the potential for a catastrophic failure is huge. I mean, you hear City of LA where buildings are flooded out.
Yeah.
You don't want to wait to that point. So you have them on a routine maintenance. The lifespan is 75 years and you replace them so that you don't end up with a catastrophic failure that from a main that wasn't even leaking and all of a sudden we flooded a neighborhood.
I absolutely agree, but the fact is that we've gone way, way beyond this, and we're really trying to get caught up. That's what we're trying to do. So, I mean, it's a general question, and I really don't expect to get the answer tonight, but when we think about this, do we want to commit $13 million to replace all that, or do we want to set a target to say 80% of that? And this is a general question that, we all have to think about a little bit, because, I'm also concerned about the other needs that we have, like the pump house, and the condition of the control panel there that has been haywired since it caught fire years ago, We've been lucky that it hasn't gone bad since then, but that could happen. So it seems to me, in my mind, that's something I worry about more than maybe some of the pipes that are old but still holding well. So I think what I'm trying to say is I think we have to decide what the capital need is that we are really going to seriously go after. And we have to do that first, kind of. And, you know, it bothers me that only the mains have been included here and not the other stuff. We should really think about everything that needs to be done, and then are we going to tackle 100% of that or some percentage of that, and then try to get caught up in future years? So, you know, so I'm not sure if that's more of a statement than a question, you know, but we'll
Any
talk
other
about
questions? Okay, let's open up to public comment.
Statement really quick. Good evening, mayors, councilmen, and women. My name is Adam Malaskis. I'm with the Aquarius Waterworks. He gave a presentation to quite a few of the city staff, and I want to thank Jose for organizing that, and Director Inman for putting his report together. Also, City Manager Aguilar for the detailed AMI specifications, features, and benefits of what the tool can actually do for the city. Just wanted to touch on Councilmember Capaccio's quick question about why are we not addressing a cloud-based system? We actually, the solution that we brought to the table is actually both, can either be hosted on a local server or hosted in the cloud as well. So you have the flexibility to either do both options.
Is the one hosted in the cloud more expensive than if it's hosted on the server?
So if it is hosted in the cloud, there is a monthly fee for that. It's actually the Amazon cloud.
Oh.
So it would be hosted in their secured cloud environment.
That would lower the capital requirement because we're trading it off with a monthly cloud fee.
Not buying servers, for example.
Yeah, so generally how it would work is the data would be hosted on a server here that would be maintained by city staff, whereas there is no maintenance involved by city staff if you're hosting it in the cloud-based solution. But there is an annual or a monthly fee associated with that to keep it under the Amazon umbrella. And also, just to quickly touch on, I think there was a little confusion on cellular technology versus radio frequency technology, which is two different solutions. They both can talk to the same cloud-based system. Cellular technology is getting better and better. The offerings that are out there on the market currently are on the 2G network, which has been publicized to be disbanded here in the next few years. So it's not quite the long-term solution that the city is most likely looking for. So I think that's all I had at the moment.
Okay.
Any further questions from
I don't think so. Thank you. Other public comment?
Good evening. This is Michael Musavi from Fathom. I know it's getting really late, and I just wanted to mention that Fathom was one of the solutions that we discussed right here. And in addition to AMI technology, one of the offerings that has been discussed with the city staff is that the financing aspect of that, and also being able to take the risk of all the implementation. And also the solution that actually pays for itself day one. And we obviously love to talk to you about that and get into the details of that if we get an opportunity to do that, and go over the financials and to show that the actual financing is a LPA, is a lease purchase agreement that is backed by equipment. It doesn't go against your debt ratio. And I look at this as like two different options. One, getting the AMI and the solutions in place with financing that we are proposing, Fathom, and customer service and billing, and also looking at different financials for the distribution system and the piping. So we'd love to talk to you about that if we get an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Okay, so what should we do, folks?
Well, what I'd like to see is, again, this is very preliminary, and I did talk to our city manager about this, is we need to lay out, whichever alternatives we choose to look at and get the net present value of each so that we can compare, because even with this, you really can't even compare the loan with the bonds, and that would be the easiest comparison. But, there appears to be savings with the Fathom solution, and also, Veolia has, that's a pretty big thing, and there could be some big money in that. So, I know that's quite a bit of work to do that, but we need to see the cash flows. But again, first, I think the most important thing is we need to decide how much capital we need to, how much of this we're going to take on. And to me, it's really not an option anymore to kick the can down the road like, that's how we got into this mess, because we haven't charged enough for water since the 60s, trying to just save a nickel on every unit of water. And if we had that extra nickel, we wouldn't even be in this situation now if they'd have started 40 years ago charging that extra nickel. So that's put us in the situation we're in, and I think we've got to just take it head on and face the music and say, this is what it's going to cost to fix this broken system. Because if we don't do it, the problem just gets worse next year and the year after and the year after that. But it may just not be practical to try to catch up in one fell swoop here. And Madam City Manager, as you said, you could spend $13 million over a period of 3 to 5 years. So I'd like to see that also laid out in the cash flow, because we're not going to do this all in year one. So if we get a loan or a bond, then we have all this cash, then what do we do with it? We get 1% rate of return on something we're paying 3 or 4% for. Is there a way to manage that better with the cash flows? So I think, we need a meeting that's dedicated to this, in my opinion. And, if you can maybe start a preliminary alternatives, and we can, at that same meeting, maybe we can hear from these other vendors. We can decide which ones and hear from them, because I want a little more detail on, like the Fathom. I'm not ready to write them off yet, because it does appear that there is a savings. So let them make their pitch, and let's see what kind of savings there is. And the same for Veolia. And also in this, what I'd like to see is more a breakdown of our costs for the water system. Because like in the Fathom option, they're just taking the customer service and the billing part of this. But we still have, we do all the maintenance of the mains. We still have the water production costs. We have electricity costs. And I'd like to see all that breakdown, because then from Veolia, I want to see how they're going to extract that efficiency. And I think that's going to help, because like one of our biggest costs is electricity. So, can you help save on electricity costs? Can you save on pumping? Can you save on, when you gave us the presentation before on the procurement, well, how much cheaper is ductile iron pipe for you than it is if we go to buy it? So I'll be looking for those kinds of details on how you are going to provide that value added, because I think we're going to pay our city attorney a lot of money in helping with that 22,000-page contract if we were to do that. So I really want to see that value add with them. But that's my thoughts on how we should proceed,
I agree with that. I think I've been very clear about this for the last year. I think all these ideas are great. If you lump them together, they don't quite fit together. Some are going to have to be taken out at the expense of others. I just don't think it's bold enough. I really think we have a huge problem, and I think if we just look at it as a $13 million problem because we can't do it all at once, it'll never get done. We have a $40 million problem that I heard of last time we talked about this. And if we fixed all these leakers that you see on this list, we know there are still leakers out there. So we'll go through all this 2-3 years, do these projects, spend this money, and we're still going to have customers with water leaks in front of their house. So it seems to me we ought to be talking a little bit more aggressively. And I think it's up to us to sell the public. If we take to them a comprehensive plan that costs a lot of money and they turn us down, they turn us down. But I think it's time for council to stand up and say, hey, this is what it's going to take, and, you know, give us the authorization. And that might include, you know, first you have to get the details, you got to get the numbers down, and I think everything you said I agree with. Once you have a nice cut and dried plan, I would pursue it in any way financially we could that makes some kind of sense, that's plausible financially. It might include a parcel tax, it might include a rate increase, it might include some parts of this as a public-private partnership. Any way to make this work for our public, because I think the previous councils, for whatever reasons, I'm not a historian of city councils in this city. For whatever reasons, this has just not been a priority. And we're sitting here and we know about these problems. And if we just say, oh, we're going to do a little bit now, and then 3 or 4 years later, someone else will take, you know where that's going to go. So I've said my piece. Any other comments?
No, I think my only question, I guess, going forward, I agree with both of those comments. I think that we probably do need a special meeting. I just don't know if we could actually get through all this in one special meeting. So,
no way.
For me, it really breaks down to the financing options, which I think will be coupled with the real costs of what we're looking at. You know, the true needs, whether it's wells, chargers, pumps, and the pipes. And I think we can talk about that in conjunction with the financing. And then I think the AMI and the potential public-private partnerships, to me, are a little bit different. So I don't know if that's how we want to group it, but I think if we try to bring this all back even for a special meeting, it just wouldn't be enough time.
Well, the only thing I want to say, though, is I think AMI has to be included in it. I mean, that's like one of maybe several regrets I have in my first 4 years on the council, where I think I made some mistakes. That one, if I had to do it over again, I would have done 2 years ago and included that in the rates.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And we didn't know, again, about the severity of the drought, but oh my God, with all the complaints we got, I mean, that would have been a godsend to be able to address the leaks at that time. So I think the time is now, we're there where the technology is mature enough, it just should be included.
No, I agree. No, I don't think that there's any question that we're going to get to AMI. My only question is, considering we only talked to 2 vendors today, we've kind of given staff direction to go out and see if there are any other options. I could foresee AMI itself just taking a long time to talk about, but if we want to combine it with the financing and the capital needs conversation, then we can. I'm just trying to think about the most efficient use of our time. And if we're going to have vendors come back, for example, we didn't hear from the gentleman from Veolia.
Right.
So I don't want to have him sit through another meeting and then we don't talk to him.
I'll just say, I think as an overall big picture, high level, this was really good. I think it puts all the pieces of issues that we've talked about over the last couple of years. Yes, I agree that special meeting is going to be necessary. I strongly believe that the AMI needs to be part of the discussion, because I keep thinking, I'm like, it's chicken or egg. What comes first? What should come first before we consider the next piece? But I think the AMI cost needs to be included in it, so that part of the discussion will, for me, I'd like to see that come earlier, and I think the financing piece will come later. And you know, I have a lot of questions of the financing. I mean, we don't know what the interest rate's going to be at the time. We don't know the total amount, with terms. I mean, all of those pieces come into play. But it's going to be at a given time that we're actually analyzing that, so that just might be further down the line. So the comments about the infrastructure and looking at in its totality, I think will be important, and seeing how much we can chunk off at a given 3 years, 5-year time. And then also figuring out the cost of the AMI as part of that. So when we are considering the different financing options and financing streams, I think that would be all part of it, as well as the water rates.
I actually really do think we need to do the AMI in one meeting. have the vendors come back, as well as Viola, because I'm very interested in the private, public, before we even go to the financing. I think, we can talk about the bonds and we can talk about a loan. Once we understand what it is we need to purchase, what the time frame is, I agree that we need to put all the infrastructure together, not just the water mains. Is it going to be a 15-year project, a 20-year project, a 5-year project? So we need that kind of information back. But I would do the financing after, along with talking about an assessment. If we need to do an assessment on top of a bond, if we just need to do the assessment. So I would like to hear back from the AMI and at least get that started or financed, or
So I'm
listen to
hearing
them.
that most of us are in agreement with you. We would like
Yeah.
to see that separate, right?
And Viola.
And then,
I think actually the nuts and bolts of which AMI we do, I think we can do that down the road. What I'd be looking for is agreement that we are going to do it, and it's going to cost roughly $1.3 million. So now let's figure out that, add that in, because we first, again, I think the thing is we have to decide how much we want, how much we're going to fix here, and what it's going to cost. Then look at the financing options and whether a public-private partnership might make sense. So I think that's all we need to do for now for AMI.
No, because I would actually like to listen to what they have. I don't know. I mean, just to say we're going to spend 1.3 on AMI, I don't think we can do that. I think we need to listen to what's out there.
Now or later?
Well, we're doing not tonight.
Oh, no, but I mean, as far as prioritizing what our next step,
Our next step is either the financing should be the very last thing, right? So we do Viola and private, public sector. We do the AMI.
okay, see, I don't see it that way. I think we need to all agree on what we need to tackle first as far as infrastructure. Then the Veolia is an option we can pursue, because there could be that's part of financing to me when we look at our financing options, because that is another source of cash that comes in where they take part of the operation and bring money in exchange. So, I mean, that's how I see it.
I actually like the idea, though, of or I should say, ballparking the amount for AMI, just so that we can put that aside and we can determine which product, which source or solution that we go with. But I think that's a nice strategic move. I do want to ask, and I know I'm kind of going off in left field, but it's related. If we went in the route of assessment, how, working backwards, what kind of timeline do we need for that, a special assessment?
Minimum of a year to 18 months. There's engineering required, there's quite a bit of work for an assessment district.
Okay.
Well, so
I don't know if Kev's still here, but it's keep engineers employed.
So the bottom line is, how much money do we need? And then how do we get that money? Then how do we pay back the money? And the payback part is could be a combination of rates or an assessment. I don't think there's any other option, is there? That's about it, right?
So in terms of ordering, do we want to bring back, do we really want a special meeting, or do we want to just have a few council meetings partially dedicated to this? Because it sounds like we're breaking it up into.
Yeah, I really think we need a special meeting, and it needs to be advertised as such. And then, just to boil this down into what we think as a council that we need, and then we need to take it, just like we did the town halls, and then explain to people why it needs to be done in a more comprehensive way, and let them be able to ask questions and talk to our staff and various people, so that it can be discussed a little bit more thoroughly instead of a formal council meeting where they have 3 minutes to say their piece,
Mm-hmm.
and then take it from there. And that'll help us figure
can
out.
we call that a big picture meeting?
Yeah, and I
Kind
think it'll help us to also discuss with people what their appetite might be and how we're going to pay
Right.
for it.
Exactly.
And whether they you know, whether they feel like we do that we need to address the problem.
My thought is, you can deal with the totality of the problem without having to try to do it all in 1 or 2 years. You can plan out. You can plan out an execution that could take 10 or 15 years. But I think what would give our public a great amount of confidence in us and our government is the idea that we have this thing under control. We've got a plan to get these things replaced. It's just going to happen in some sort of pre-agreed upon sequence. And, by the way, it's funded. It's ready to go. It seems to me we ought to have a meeting about that, and then we fit all these pieces in to see whether they fit or not and how we want to do that.
I think that's what I was trying to say. We need the plan. We need the total plan, and then we can say, okay, so for the first 5 years, we're going to implement AMI. We're going to, fix this part for the next 5 years, for the next 5 years, because, until we have that plan, until we know, then we can figure out the financing. So maybe we do the water rate, and we do a loan, and we do the water rate, then we do an assessment for the more. But this is great for an overview, but I was really looking for a plan, a really structured plan of using, what your staff time can be, what your commitments can be, where we can be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
So what needs to be done and when?
Yes, and then once we have,
done and when,
once we have that, then I think we need to start doing our educational pieces and going out and talking about, what is AMI? Why is that so important? It's a big chunk of money, but I think people need to understand it's not just, new technology. It really is a way for us to be able to do our conservation numbers. It helps the residents out. It helps the environment. So that's something that we, kind of sell that first, and then
Saves money.
Saves money.
That's the main thing, yeah.
But so that's what I would like. And I don't know if we need a council meeting to decide which ones would our plan look like. I would prefer the staff to bring that back in increments, and then we have a council meeting just solely on that to talk about that.
So
postpone anybody coming back? Any of these firms?
for now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah,
So
I
we
think
have
that's putting
the-
the cart before the horse.
Yeah, and then once we do that, then of course we would want the vendors to come back
And so if I may, if I'm.
and see how they fit into that plan. I think that's what we need, we need a plan to see how they would fit. How would Viola fit with that plan? How would the AMIs?
So if I may, if you're just going off of what you're saying and probably providing more concrete direction to staff is, let's say 20 or 25-year plan, maybe even look at the first 3 years, because that would probably include AMI, I would assume. Then maybe what the first 5 years look like for infrastructure, the next 5 years for infrastructure, is that kind of what we're looking at? And then once we have this 20 or 25-year plan and all of the capital projects that are involved in there, is that we can try and fit in where water rates need to go into and where, what kind of
Yeah.
financing looks
Yeah,
into.
exactly.
Right.
Parcel
And-
tax or anything.
What's the requirement first, and then figure out how to finance it?
And then once we have that big picture plan of 20, 25 years out, then we can kind of go back to looking at the AMI if we want to go into that detail, looking what those financing options are. But I think that's a good idea.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
no, that makes sense. Just to be clear, we're really talking about like a 5-year plan, right? We wouldn't be talking about a 20. I
No,
don't
we'd
want
be
sta-
talking a 20-year plan.
So, but I don't want staff to go back and spin your wheels on a 20, 25 year. The 10 to 15 years that come after the first 5 to 10, I guess those are really hypothetical, right? I would be focused a little bit more on the 5 to 10 year. What are we going to be doing, in the first decade?
Well, couldn't we get an assessment from staff based on maybe what contractors could tell us? How quickly could we get a complete turnover of our water
Right.
system?
I
How
guess
long would it
that's the
take?
point.
Would it be
Yeah.
10 years? Would it be 15? Maybe it could be done in less than that.
Well, we don't want a complete turnover. What we want to do is
Mm-hmm.
get caught up.
Well, that probably includes most replacement,
Most of
but,
our water system.
but maybe not all of it, hopefully.
No, I don't think all.
Probably
And
not,
all
but
the other infrastructure issues that we're dealing with, and I know there's lists of it. I can't
have
imagine we
it,
can get them
right,
down
we have it.
in 5, 10 years.
No, I do think, I hear there's not quite consensus on this, but it would be staff's recommendation that this be a 20, 30-year plan.
I'm thinking.
It needs to be that.
Well, I guess
But the focus on the
yeah.
first 5 years.
Focus on the front
No,
end.
always
Okay,
the
the
first couple of
direction-
years will be the most detailed,
The direction would be,
and less details you get further out.
the
'Cause-
direction would be, we're giving you direction in the first 5 years to get caught up, right?
Yeah.
Or however long it takes us to
that's
get
what
caught up.
You keep saying caught up.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is between caught
Yeah.
up and complete turnover. I would need to know that before I
Well,
said, well, just to
I
get
agree with
caught
that.
up.
Okay.
I think staff
The
just
stuff
needs,
that's over the mains that are over, the stuff that is over its engineered lifespan is getting all that stuff and getting to where every year, whatever is past its engineered lifespan, you replace. Everything that's already past that is getting caught up. That's what I mean by it. Does that
The
make
only
sense?
problem with that is that we have things that are under their lifespan that are leaking, too. That's in the report. So by that criteria, we're not going to get, that's why I say we really need to be talking about a comprehensive plan to replace our water system, taking into account the things that are youngest and in best shape we keep, which I think we can assess fairly well. And then giving us a plan on how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess my point is, if we're going to issue bonds or take a loan out for 18 to 20 million or more, I don't want to see a plan that has us waiting to spend 10 to 15 million of that 15 years down the road.
Oh, I
Doesn't make any
I
financial
agree.
sense.
No, I
So that's
agree.
why
That
I
was
just
never staff's intent.
No.
well, and I guess the
50
point.
million.
Well, and I guess the point is then you're really looking at how we want to spend. And you had said it earlier. The real concern about staff has about doing more than
Yeah.
18 to 20 million is how are we going to have the capacity to actually spend it in a quick enough time to make the money and the interest that you're paying on it worth it. So I guess that I keep going back to that. It's really the first 5 years. What can we get done in that first 5 years to make whatever the bond or the loan that we're we're burdening ourselves with, worth it? Because,
And I'm going to say, I don't disagree with you. I think the idea of the 20-year plan is not going to be that it's going to be the bond is going to solve it. It's going to be, yes, the focus on the first 5 years is if it's a bond, if you're refinancing or, loan, whatever that may be. But still, what is a long-range plan that we have here that staff can at least go by so that, whether it's the next council, has to address that. But the first 5 years, I think, would be what financing options we're looking at now. So I don't think there's disagreement in that, but I think the 20-year plan, 25-year plan is still going to be important to look at.
Because we're not saying in 20 years how to spend the 20 million. We're saying, what is our total?
Right.
What is our total cost? What is the,
Mm-hmm.
and it may be $50 million. Well, we can't do a $50 million bond. So, we just kind of work our way back.
And it's
What can we
important,
do?
it's important too, to have it for the long term, because
Yeah.
we need to see the effect of water rates. I mean,
Right.
we could be bumping the water rates up to pay off, then all of a sudden we've paid off a lot of stuff, and then we're collecting money that, we don't need perhaps,
Yeah.
Right, so.
So,
If I could be so bold.
But don't do so,
No,
don't
no.
do
If I
really,
could
really
be, I
detailed.
was gonna say, if I could be so bold as to recommend, there's a lot of moving parts here. You mentioned one of them. It would be really helpful to staff if we could bring in some professional assistants to help us do this part. We just don't have all the moving pieces available
so what do you
from
see?
staff.
What do you
I don't know, we'll get some estimates on what it would cost to bring in some help to get this done promptly.
Not for the plan itself that we're.
For the plan itself.
Yes.
Yes, for the plan itself, you're talking about a lot of moving pieces. Infrastructure needs, possible financing options to match the cash flow we need, future projections of rates, that's exceeds.
I think the first
So-
thing we wanted to know is what would the.
That's what I want to clarify, because what I'm hearing is quite a comprehensive
No, we just
plan
want to
and.
know what the plan, we would just want to know what it would take based on the current staff that you have and the projects that you know and the other infrastructure. What is your time frame to get us up to we're 100% finished? We have the perfect water system now. What would it
We would need some assistance to do that. We don't not have that expertise. If you wanted it promptly, I can't, there's certain things I'm always, and I don't think it'll be very expensive. I just think this is important enough that we need to do it right, and we need to have professional assistance to do it correctly. If we make an error on this,
Well, maybe that ought to be, in terms of our agenda, our next meeting, maybe you could bring us back some ideas on what it would take to put that plan together, and how much assistance you'd need, and we can approach it from that point.
And I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding. I think it seems like you have all the information of all the infrastructure or capital improvement projects.
Not entirely. We have pretty good information, but not good enough if you want to have a good strategic plan. We have basic information for the next couple of years, but there's a lot of infrastructure out there that we don't have information on regarding timing.
So is that the
If you just wanted us to look at the next 5 to 10 years, that's reasonable. Further out, we're going to need some help.
I guess that was my point.
Mm-hmm.
That was my entire point.
Yeah. We can always handle 5 to 10 year horizons. Further than that, we need some help.
So in a 5 to 10 year horizon, you could tell us
We could tell you
what
what-
our priorities and how we could get
Options
it
on
done
Mhm.
over the 5
Correct.
to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm okay
I'm fine with that. I actually don't want for you to go out and look for a consultant to do that. I guess I assumed that with the given reports that we've already had, it was just plotting it out over 20 years and saying within the first 5 years, it's going to estimate whatever, $20 million.
Most of our plans we presented are our known needs today based upon what's 75 years or older. We really don't have the plans that go for the newer, we've always concentrated on what's past due. We have good information on what's past due.
So for $20 million, I guess, so you know what we need for $20 million, right? What we need to fix? I guess I'm kind of
Because the
agreeing
20
with
million,
Council-
because the
yeah.
20 million includes paying off our current bonds at almost 9 million. So there's half the money, it's gone.
So we had heard, I guess we had heard a number, maybe I'm making this up because I kind of do that, of we would need $40 million to completely fix our water system.
As of today, correct. I think that's, I don't recall.
That was a number to replace the entire system. We're not proposing to replace the entire system.
Understood.
So, but that was the number that we gave you back in September of 2013. What makes it a little difficult now to come up with that prioritized plan is we're focusing on water mains right now because we've got a leakage problem. We all know about the leakage problem and how we're losing water and how we need to stop that loss. But Councilmember Kaposha makes a good point. There are other significant needs that we have in our system, like the control panel at the main plant or the whole main plant itself that needs to be replaced. And somehow we've got to get a handle on which of these things is going to happen first. It seems to me like we have to replace water mains because that's an issue right now. We're wasting water through leakage. But we need to maybe add some of these other things in along with that.
I think we
like
do.
main
See,
plant
really good
and
with that.
reservoirs and all that.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a
point
much
is
bigger
this.
number now.
Sure.
What I don't want to see happen is that we take on more debt and then come and find out in 5 to 10 years that, whoops, that wasn't enough and we're still paying that off and we need more. So I want to see that we, again, to your point, is be aggressive and figure out how to get on top of the problem and get, I'll use that word again, caught up to where we can predict what needs to happen going forward. Right now, we've got a bunch of stuff that's at risk. We need to fix the stuff that's at risk.
And we need to know better what's at risk, because the list of leakers we have in the staff report is not comprehensive. And beyond that, things that we don't know are leaking are beyond 75 years. So we know there's a substantial amount of water mains in the city that are not on the list that probably need to be replaced. And I think we should see that list. I think and if it's 3/4 of the main, so be it. If it's, I don't care, 50%, 100%, whatever it is, let's break it into the plan.
Bring it into the plan.
Let's be objective about it.
And we'll
rational.
take it to our constituents and see their appetite for dealing with it.
Exactly.
They might say, this makes sense, we're going to do it. They might say, I really don't even care, I'm not going to pay for it. We need to.
Might say that.
You know, they might say that. So we need to first tell the story like it is, then figure out how to sell it to our constituents and see what they say about it.
I think that, I should say that Councilmember Capocia and I have been on the water subcommittee together now for the last 2 years. And so we're a little bit of an advantage over our colleagues up here because we've been hashing over a lot of these issues in that water subcommittee for some time. And so just to getting a meeting where we're looking at all these things where we can get all this stuff out for our other 3 colleagues and
would
get them to
appreciate
that point, I think is a very important to.
Because this is the
try to
first
shoot
I'm
for.
hearing that we need a new pump house.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, there are other things too. I mean, it's a big system, it's complicated, and it's old.
And it's old. It's very old.
So then going back to the directive
Yeah.
for staff, I mean, it doesn't sound like we have consensus on that. I mean, I think eventually we are going to need a long-range strategic plan, and so I retract the fact of if we need a consultant for that purpose. But I don't know if that's what we need at this point, so,
If you could just
We-
use existing.
We can return with our best information we have at this point in time. But I really truly believe for credibility purposes and for accuracy, at some point we're going to need to bring in some experts.
No, that's fine.
But we can bring in what we have, what we know of today, and just so it isn't, set in stone, because we don't know everything today. And if it's just looking at what our infrastructure needs on the water side are, we've got a pretty good idea. When the council was talking about actually creating a long-term plan with financing and when different financing kicks in, that's what I thought the council originally direction we were going. If you just want to know what our list of projects are, what we know's on the horizon, we'll do our best job at it, but we'll do the best we can.
Can I
But
just-
it could miss a few things.
Madam City Manager, I don't want a list of projects. I want a list, I want a plan that tells us how to fix our water system. And that could be as comprehensive as you choose, but I want to know that when I'm looking at that plan, if we choose to do it and take it to the taxpayers and they say yes, that within a certain time frame, we're going to have a new water system. And we're not going to be dealing with these issues that we've been dealing with since I've lived in the city. And I think that there's some consensus out there in the community on this, particularly with the 2 years of water discoloration issues. The water issue with the conservation problem, I think it's reached a threshold. And so I don't mean to be disrespectful, except I don't know if you're.
I think, no, I'm
hearing
understanding.
what
I think,
I'm saying.
no, I'm hearing what you're saying, and if I could just sort of, maybe I can help with the council consensus here. You all want to go in the same direction with eventually ending up with a really comprehensive 20-year plan and financing that goes with it and projects identified that can be explained to the public. The issue here is just how we bring it back to the council. I do believe there is usefulness in the first step being, what are the needs? That's the first step.
Yes.
Before we can decide how much
Consensus there.
money, I think there's consensus, which I think we're on the same page, Mayor. I don't think there's any intention to not eventually get to that point, but I think there is consensus. First step is what we think today our needs are, programming them out as far as we can with what we have, the documents we already have existing that we've prepared in the
Right,
past.
You just need to use that.
And then as we get further into this process, that may change a little bit, but we can come back with what we know now as our needs in an order of what we think we could complete each year. Because again, we can't do $100 million worth of projects in 1 year, but some kind of order of what we think the priority is and what the amount would be for each of those years. What we know today, and we'll go out as far as we can. But I think that's the first step.
And I think that this would help when we talk about public-private company. It would help with them to know, well, maybe they can absorb that or what they can do so that we don't have to come up with. So I think, and I don't want a 50-page narrative, but I do want some sort of, these are our needs, in 10 years, we're going to absolutely have to replace this, or 15 years or something. I mean, there must be lifespan, right?
Exactly.
For equipment.
Every
Yeah.
component has a lifespan.
What is the lifespan?
Good lifespan.
And what realistically, with the staff that you currently have, could you get done?
And then whether you reflect
And
it there
that's-
or reflect it, or we can discuss it. But I guess in my head, as we're discussing this, is that I'm making the assumption that within the first 2-3 years, we are going to adopt an AMI type of solution.
That's something staff would put in the
yeah.
beginning years, definitely.
Okay.
It has just too many benefits to, not to push it out to
Great.
year 20. Yeah. So no, I think the council's all on the same page. It's just a matter of how we go through this process. And I do think the first step is to come back with this list of what the needs are. Well, it'll be a list. Well, you have to have the list to create the plan. Otherwise, we're just making up numbers. There has to be some basis to why we say year 5 to 6 needs 10 million or whatever it is. There will be a list and a plan. You can't do one without the other.
I keep hearing the years 5 to 6, 10 to 15. I'm not really concerned about the years. I'm more concerned about what we need in objective fact. Then we can talk about the years, because you'd have to give us an assessment in terms of what can be done. Just an objective fact, what do we need to spend money on? I can't sit here today and tell you what that number is. And I really feel like we need that.
You will get that, Mayor Goss, with what we're planning to bring back, looking at 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you will get that comprehensive list. And I do think it is helpful to know which years things need to happen, because we can structure our financing around that plan.
But we don't need to deal with the.
But we don't need to deal with financing right now. You're right.
So do we have agreement on that? I think we have.
And
If we
Is that
reach
going
a-
to be a
Excuse me?
special meeting or a regular meeting?
Oh, special meeting. You have to have a special meeting.
I'm just not sure when. I think we need a special meeting. I'm just not sure when it would be most effective. So, because I think that staff's going to come back the next meeting with kind of a,
We would not come back at the next meeting with this first
Exactly.
stab.
And
We're
we
gonna
don't have
need,
any meetings in August, right?
I just think that staff might need to bring us something back before we even have a special meeting. I would venture to say that staff could reach out to the water subcommittee between now and whenever they bring, honestly, because I think that,
That's,
you know,
that, you're right, I agree.
there's a lot going on right
Why
now.
don't, when you draft something, why don't we do that? And we'll give you some feedback.
And then we
Makes
can.
sense.
and then we can schedule a future meeting. I do envision being able to bring back this report on your regular agenda, as long as it's not a really
Yeah,
impacted agenda. And then you can schedule the special meeting for all the presentations.
yeah,
Those should be handled separately.
okay.
Okay.
And that will help them tailor their presentation.
Yeah, that's what I was
to
trying to
what-
get at, yeah.
To what we think our financial needs really are over the next
good.
20-year horizon.
So you have direction now, I think we have consensus on that? Great. I think that reaches the end of the agenda, right?
When do we get our microphones fixed?
You approved it tonight. In fact, I would mention the video streaming died on us this evening. That's something that will be fixed when the new system goes in also.
Are there any items for new business?
Councilmember Dalmore did the vacant property issue,
Okay, anything else?
and then
I want to see our EWIMP consultant.
Oh, that's right.
Come and give us a presentation about our milestones and what those are going to cost.
okay.
Okay, can I have
What
a
are you-
motion
what
for
are we bringing
adjournment?
back?
I'm sorry.
Our EWIMP consultant for our Rio Hondo.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah. Don't get me.
It's 10
We're trying
o'clock.
to end this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.